When my husband and I got out of the car, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law eagerly asked him, "Hey, Paul, what's up with this car? It's amazing. Glad you finally decided to join us in the better part of society, but buying such an expensive car out of the blue is a bold move." My husband laughed and told them, "This isn't my car, it belongs to Jasmine's father." Both my mother-in-law and sister-in-law gasped, saying, "What?" Then my parents stepped out of the car, and my in-laws were shocked when they saw what they were wearing. Such an expensive suit, I recognize that brand. Why are Jasmine's parents dressed so well? My name is Jasmine. I'm 28 years old and work in an office. I married my husband, Paul, last year. Paul has always been kind and caring since we started dating, and I was so happy to marry him. We share the household chores because we both work. Paul has lived alone for a long time and is great at taking care of things around the house. Sometimes he even cooks better than me, depending on the dish. We support each other and have a happy life together. But there's one thing that's been getting in the way of our happiness: my in-laws. They assume I'm poor and treat me poorly because of it. Why do they think I'm poor? I think it started when we had a dinner party to meet each other's families before we got married. My in-laws, Paul's parents, his sister, and him, come from a wealthy background. His father worked as a banker and had a lot of money. Everything he wears is from a high-end brand. They seem to think that wearing expensive things means you have status. Paul, however, isn't interested in those things at all. He prefers buying second-hand clothes online and loves them, sometimes more than their original price. So when I met my in-laws for the first time, I was surprised by how different they were from Paul. I even wondered if Paul was adopted. I later realized that Paul lived alone for so long because he didn't share their values. He started living on his own after he went to college. Since they think that being rich makes you better than others, they looked down on me and my parents when we met for the first time. My dad runs a small factory. When my in-laws found that out, they made fun of him right away. He runs a factory, and yes, maybe he's the president, but a factory with a name I've never heard of must be poor. No big bank would ever give him a loan. They said all this while meeting us for the first time, which made me question their character. If Paul hadn't warned me beforehand, I would have been furious. My parents had also been prepared, so they stayed calm, even when my in-laws mocked us. Well, it's true we run a small business, but we're grateful we can keep it going. We can pay our employees every month. I wonder how many employees you have. Oh, I heard Jasmine has an older brother. Oh, he's working today. He can't join us. Is he on a business trip? Does your brother work for a good company? My son works at my company. When my dad said that, my in-laws all laughed. You mean it's a family business? A family that can't even take a day off must not be doing well. They kept saying terrible things about my family. Paul kept asking them to stop, but they wouldn't listen. In the end, Paul had to cut the visit short. That's why I don't have a good opinion of my in-laws. They made fun of my family, too. Honestly, some people might have ended the marriage over something like this, but I love my husband more than that, so I decided to marry him. As long as I don't have to deal with my in-laws, we can live happily and peacefully. The truth is, my husband doesn't like his family either. I was angry with them for mocking my family, so we avoided visiting my in-laws unless we absolutely had to. But about a year after we got married, I guess they got tired of us not showing up. They started pressuring us to spend time with them. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law began coming to our house often. They would say whatever they wanted. Paul doesn't come home at all. It must be because she's trying to stop him. She's probably jealous of our lives. I understand. We live at a higher standard than the poor, but I do hope you'll have a baby soon. If you don't have an heir, she's just a worthless wife trying to get rich. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law would visit from when I got home from work until my husband arrived. I get home early because my job lets me leave on time, but my husband usually works overtime and gets home just before 9 p.m. So, for about 3 hours, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law would come over to criticize me. Your apartment is so small. Paul works for a good company. You should live in a nicer house. But my husband and I think our place is big enough for us. It's not your husband, it's you, right? Don't impose your ideas on Paul. There's so much plain food in the fridge. Don't look in my fridge without permission. You don't have caviar or fancy wines. We don't have anything like that. How boring. Why did Paul marry you? A poor, money-seeking, boring woman is rare. You can say that, but if you touch Paul's money even a little bit, you'll regret it. We'll make sure you're erased from society. They would make fun of me, threaten me, and ridicule me, then leave. I'd tell my husband about it, and he'd scold them, but they kept coming over, showing no remorse. They even ambushed me at home when I came back from work. Every time I came home, I felt depressed. How could they keep picking on me like this? But my mother-in-law and sister-in-law didn't stop trying to make me feel small. It all became too much for me, and I had a mental breakdown. I started spending time at a cafe until my husband finished work. Then I would go home with him. When my mother-in-law and sister-in-law saw me returning with my husband, they said, "You're like a pest, taking away Paul's freedom like that." Honestly, it was more disgusting that they waited for 3 hours just to try and tear me down. My husband was fed up too. He even went to his father for help, but my father-in-law was just like my mother-in-law. He said that having a poor wife was rare for them, and if things didn't change, it would ruin our marriage. That's when I decided to take drastic action. It wasn't something I wanted to do, but my in-laws had pushed me too far, and I wasn't going to back down. A few days later, my husband and I decided to visit them. My in-laws were thrilled when we told them Paul was bringing his wife home with him, but then, my mother-in-law said something horrible. "I'm so happy to see Jasmine after such a long time. I wonder what it's like to be a wife beater." We arrived at my in-laws' house for the weekend, and when we got out of the car, they rushed outside, excited to see us. "Hey, Paul, what's with this car? It's amazing. I'm glad you're finally living on our side of society, but buying such a fancy car out of the blue is a bold move, isn't it?" My husband laughed and said, "This isn't my car, it's Jasmine's father's." "What?" my mother-in-law and sister-in-law said at the same time. Then my parents got out of the car. My in-laws were completely shocked when they saw how my parents were dressed. "What an expensive-looking suit. I recognize that brand. Why are Jasmine's parents dressed so well?" And then, my brother stepped out of the car, tall, 6 feet, looking like a model. My in-laws' eyes widened in disbelief when they saw my brother wearing the same high-end brown suit as my father. "Who is that handsome guy?" "Nice to meet you. I'm Simon, Jasmine's brother." My in-laws were stunned. Seeing my family so different from the last time they saw me, my husband was fed up, saying, "What the hell are you doing?" and urged them to show my family around the house. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law quickly invited us in, acting like the complete opposite of how they were before. They led us into the living room and said, "We'll prepare some tea for you right away." They were curious and asked my father, "How can you afford such luxury items?" It was unbelievable how quickly their attitude changed just because of how we looked. My father responded calmly, "My factory is small, but the parts we make are unique. We receive orders from big Japanese and foreign companies." My father's words left my in-laws speechless. Their faces turned pale. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law suddenly became polite to me, but my father-in-law stayed completely silent. My sister-in-law, however, was very interested in my brother. She asked him a lot of questions. "What kind of work do you do at your father's company?" "I'm good at English, so I handle organizing meetings with international companies, and I travel abroad for half of the year." "That's really impressive. Are you single, Simon?" "No, I'm married." "That's too bad, but I think I'd be a better match for you than your wife. What do you think? Maybe we could go out for dinner sometime?" My sister-in-law started flirting with my married brother right in front of me and my parents. Honestly, I couldn't help but admire her audacity, but now, I was ready to make her regret this behavior. She was going to face consequences, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. My brother looked at me and nodded, then turned to my sister-in-law and said, "Are you serious? You think you're more desirable than my wife?" My wife was a former model. She's highly educated, and her father is the president of a well-known company. You're no match for her, no matter how you look at it. It's funny how some people, who only have a little wealth, forget their place, isn't it? I don't talk badly about you, but you should know your place and stick to your own path. My brother's words struck a nerve, and my sister-in-law was so stunned she couldn't speak. She was in shock and seemed on the verge of passing out. Finally, my father spoke to my in-laws. "I don't care how much money other people have. Money is important, but you can't measure a person's value by it. We should focus on being human, not obsessed with wealth." "I'm sorry we were harsh earlier," my father said, bowing his head in apology. My in-laws were now completely stunned and quickly apologized. Since then, they have never tried to bully me again. In fact, they've started contacting me regularly, trying to flatter me. It's a bit annoying how often they reach out now. By the way, My parents and brother aren't the type to flaunt luxury brands or boast about their wealth. They simply helped me with my plan this time. My father prefers to wear an old suit, even if it's cheap, and he's not interested in expensive brands. My brother is very kind and doesn't look down on others, which is why his wife's father really likes him. He even asked my brother to take over the company because he thinks he'd make a better successor than his own son. I'm sorry I put my family through something they're not used to, I said as we were all exhausted on the way home. After that, I was able to return to a peaceful married life with my husband. I haven't visited my in-laws since, but my husband still visits them during Thanksgiving and Christmas. Since that event, my in-laws have changed. They seem to have lost some of their confidence, or maybe they've repented. They no longer brag about their wealth like they used to. My husband even says he feels most comfortable around them now. I'm not sure if they'll ever go back to their old ways, but for now, I'm just glad the issue has been resolved. I will continue to take care of my husband and my family, and I'll try to live a humble life. They thought they were superior, but in reality, my family has much more wealth than they do. My in-laws should be ashamed of themselves. I don't think it's right to keep looking down on others just because they have less. I'm glad you were able to give your in-laws a good scolding, and I hope you continue to live in harmony with your family.
I never expected to discover my husband's true nature while hiding behind a potted ficus tree in our living room. Yet there I was, crouched behind its leaves at midnight, watching Chase pace back and forth with his phone pressed to his ear. My name is Willa, and until that moment I thought I had a pretty good handle on my life. I'm an elementary school teacher, married to what I believed was a devoted husband, and expecting our first child. But life has a way of shattering your certainties when you least expect it. "Look, Mom, Douglas's death changes everything," Chase whispered into his phone, unaware of my presence. "Willa's too emotional right now to think clearly about the inheritance. This is our chance." I pressed my hand against my mouth, stifling a gasp. My father had passed away just 2 weeks ago, and here was my husband, plotting something about my inheritance in the middle of the night. "No, listen," he continued, his voice taking on that smooth, persuasive tone I used to find charming. "Once the shares are transferred, we can push for a quick sale. The company's worth millions. Willa doesn't need to know the details until it's done." My legs started cramping from squatting, but I didn't dare move. I'd only come downstairs for a glass of water, but Chase's furtive whispers had stopped me in my tracks. "Of course I feel bad about it," he said, running his fingers through his hair, a gesture I now realized might have been more calculating than nervous. "But think about it. We could finally get you and Dad out of debt. Get that house in Palm Springs you've always wanted." The room started spinning slightly. I steadied myself against the wall, my other hand instinctively moving to my barely showing baby bump. 5 years of marriage, and I'd never heard this tone in Chase's voice before. Cold, calculating, almost predatory. "Just keep this between us for now," he continued. "I've already talked to Leonard about the legal angles. We just need to wait for the right moment to suggest it to Willa. You know how she gets about her father's legacy." I did get emotional about my father's legacy because it mattered. Because Dad had built his automotive company from nothing, working 16-hour days while still making time to teach me piano every Sunday. Because he believed in hard work and integrity above all else. Chase ended the call and headed upstairs. I waited until his footsteps faded before emerging from my hiding spot, my water forgotten. The moonlight streaming through our bay windows felt harsh now, highlighting all the expensive furniture Chase had insisted we needed. Furniture that, I realized with growing nausea, had been bought with my family's money. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Jenna, my best friend since college. "Can't sleep?
Saw you were online.
Everything okay?" I stared at the message, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. How could I possibly explain what had just happened? That my husband was plotting to steal my inheritance while I carried his child? That the man I trusted with my heart was apparently nothing more than a well-dressed con artist? Instead, I typed, "Need to talk. Breakfast tomorrow? Important." Her response came immediately. Usual place, 7 a.m. Should I be worried? I looked around our living room at all the carefully curated photos of our perfect life together. Chase and me on our honeymoon in Bali. At our wedding, where he'd charmed everyone with his tearful vows. family gatherings where he'd played the devoted son-in-law to perfection. Not worried, I wrote back. Just angry. And planning. The morning after discovering Chase's betrayal, I sat across from Jenna at our favorite breakfast spot, methodically shredding a napkin while she processed everything I'd just told her. The cafe buzzed with its usual morning crowd, but all I could hear was Chase's voice from last night, plotting to steal my inheritance. That manipulative bastard. Jenna finally said, her lawyer mode kicking in. Have you checked your joint accounts? Your personal accounts. I nodded, pulling out my phone. Already did. Nothing seems off yet, but... I paused as my screen lit up with a text from Chase. Having lunch with Mom and Dad today. They want to discuss some investment opportunities for the inheritance. Join us. My stomach churned. They're moving faster than I thought, I said, showing Jenna the message. She leaned back, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. You know what's interesting? Chase's law firm specializes in corporate acquisitions. I looked them up after you called. What are you saying? I'm saying this might be bigger than just Chase and his parents. Have you noticed anyone unusual hanging around your father's company lately? Before I could answer, the cafe door chimed. My mother-in-law Maureen's voice carried across the room, making me freeze mid-sentence. Willa, what a surprise. Jenna's eyes widened slightly, but I managed to smile as Maureen approached our table, designer purse swinging. She'd clearly just had her hair done. Probably on Chase's credit card, I realized bitterly. Just grabbing breakfast with Jenna, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. How are you? Oh, wonderful. And you're looking so pregnant and glowy, Maureen gushed, patting my stomach without asking. Chase told me you might join us for lunch today. We have such exciting ideas to discuss. I felt Jenna's foot press against mine under the table, a silent reminder to stay calm. Actually, I have a doctor's appointment. I lied smoothly. Routine checkup. But surely you can reschedule? This is about your future, your baby's future. Maureen's smile remained fixed, but her eyes hardened slightly. The baby's future is exactly why I can't miss it, I replied, gathering my things. Maybe next time. As we left the cafe, Jenna grabbed my arm. Okay, that was not a coincidence. She was checking up on you. Chase must have tracked my location through our shared account, I realized. I need to change my settings. You need to do more than that, Jenna said firmly. You need to protect yourself legally before they can make any moves on the company shares. My phone buzzed again, another text from Chase. Mom said she saw you at breakfast. Everything okay? You seem distant lately. I stared at the message, remembering how Chase used to send me random texts throughout the day just to make me smile. Now each word felt calculated, part of some elaborate performance. I don't know how to keep pretending everything's normal, I admitted to Jenna. Every time he touches me or asks about the baby, I feel sick. Then don't pretend, Jenna said. Use it. Let him think you're struggling with grief over your dad. It'll buy us time to figure out exactly what they're planning. As if on cue, my phone lit up with a call from my mother, Lorraine. Honey, are you sitting down? I just got some interesting information about Chase's firm that you need to hear. I put the phone on speaker, meeting Jenna's concerned gaze. My mother's voice was tight with controlled anger as she continued. Remember that merger Dad was fighting against before he died? Guess which law firm is representing the buyers? The pieces suddenly clicked into place. This wasn't just about inheritance. This was about my father's entire legacy. And my husband had been working against him the whole time. I have to go, I told them both. I need to get home before Chase realizes something's wrong. But first, I'm stopping by the bank. What are you going to do? Jenna asked. I thought about Chase's smooth lies, Maureen's calculating eyes, and my father's dreams for his company. I'm going to protect what's mine, I said. And then I'm going to make them regret ever underestimating me. After a week of playing detective in my own home, I finally found what I was looking for in Chase's home office. My hands trembled as I held the documents, merger proposals, confidential emails, and draft agreements, all dated months before my father's death. The corporate logo at the top of each page felt like a slap in the face. Bennett and Associates. The firm where my husband had worked for the past 3 years. The office door creaked behind me. I whirled around to find Chase standing there, his expression unreadable. "Looking for something specific?" he asked, voice eerily calm. I held up the papers. "How long were you planning this? Before or after Dad got sick?" "It's not what you think, Willa." He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. "The merger would save the company. Your father was too stubborn to see it." "Too stubborn." My voice cracked. "He built that company from nothing. He trusted you. And I'm trying to protect his legacy." Chase moved closer, reaching for my hand. I stepped back, bumping into his desk. "The market's changing. Without this merger, the company won't survive another 5 years." "Don't." I pressed my hand against my stomach, feeling our baby kick. "Don't pretend this is about protecting anything except your commission." His face hardened. "You're emotional. The pregnancy hormones. Don't you dare." The rage I'd been suppressing burst free. "I found the transfer documents, Chase. Already filled out, just waiting for my signature. Were you going to forge that too?" Something flickered in his eyes. Not guilt, but annoyance at being caught. "Your father's death changed everything. We had to move quickly."
We.
I laughed bitterly. "You mean you and your parents? How much are they getting from this deal?" The sound of the front door opening interrupted us. "Chase? Willa?" Maureen's voice floated up the stairs. "We brought lunch." Chase grabbed my arm. "Don't make a scene. Not now. Think about the baby." I yanked away from him. "That's exactly what I'm thinking about." "There you are." Maureen appeared in the doorway, Leonard behind her. Her smile faltered when she saw the papers in my hand.
Oh.
"Are those the merger documents? Wonderful. We can discuss everything over lunch." "Actually," I said, straightening my spine, "I just got off the phone with the board members." A lie, but worth it to see Chase's face pale. Interesting how none of them knew about these negotiations. Leonard stepped forward, all smooth charm. "Now, Willa, business decisions can be complicated. Like the decision to hide your firm's involvement from my father while he was dying?" I watched their practiced smiles crack. "Or the decision to use my pregnancy as cover while you rush through this deal?" "You're making a mistake," Chase said quietly. "This merger is happening, with or without your cooperation." I thought about my father, working late nights, teaching me that integrity mattered more than quick profits. About my mother's warning, and Jenna's legal advice. "You're right about one thing," I said, pulling out my phone. "Something is happening today." I pressed play on the recording app that had been running since I entered the office. Chase's earlier words filled the room. "The market's changing. Without this merger." "You recorded me?" Chase's charm vanished completely. "That's illegal." "Actually," I said, "in this state, it's perfectly legal to record conversations you're part of. But insider trading and attempted fraud? Those are definitely illegal." Maureen stepped toward me, hands raised placatingly. "Darling, let's all calm down. I've already sent copies to the board, the SEC, and my lawyers," I continued. Another lie, but I'd be doing it the moment I left. "So here's what's going to happen. You're all going to leave my house. Now." "This is my house too," Chase snapped. "Check the deed," I replied. "Dad put it in my name as a wedding gift. Funny how you never noticed that detail." I walked past them, head high despite my shaking hands. At the doorway, I turned back. "Oh, and Chase? I'd start looking for a good lawyer. One that doesn't work for your father." Their protests followed me down the stairs, but I didn't stop. My phone was already in my hand, texting Jenna. "It's worse than we thought. Meet me at your office. Bringing evidence." The emergency room's fluorescent lights made everything look harsh and unreal. I sat on the examination table, my mother clutching my hand while the doctor checked my blood pressure for the 3rd time. "Still too high," she said, frowning. "How long have you been experiencing these headaches?" "Just the past few days," I lied. My mother's grip tightened. She knew better. The headaches had started right after I confronted Chase. My phone buzzed again, the 20th message from Chase since I'd left the house. I ignored it, just like all the others. The doctor cleared her throat. "Mrs. Bennett." "Harper." I corrected automatically. "I'm going back to Harper." "MS. Harper, then." Your blood pressure is concerning, especially at 24 weeks. I'm recommending bed rest for at least a week. A week. The merger vote was in 5 days. I can't, I started, but my mother cut me off. She'll do it, Lorraine said firmly. At my house. My phone lit up with a new message, this time from Leonard. Think about what you're doing to this family. Chase is devastated. Let's talk about this like adults. The doctor left to prepare discharge papers, and my mother finally spoke. Why didn't you tell me it was getting this bad? Because saying it out loud makes it real. I pressed my hands against my belly, feeling my daughter move. Did you know Chase was working with Carlton Industries even before Dad got sick? They were planning this takeover for months. That's why you need to step back, she said. Let Jenna and the lawyers handle it. Focus on my granddaughter. A knock at the door made us both jump. Chase stood there, still in his suit from work, looking appropriately concerned. The perfect worried husband. Thank God, he said, stepping forward. When the hospital called, get out. My mother's voice could have frozen hell. I have a right to be here. That's my child. The child you were willing to use as a distraction while you stole her inheritance. My mother stood, all 5 feet 4 inches of pure fury. The same child whose stress levels are endangering her life because of your schemes? Chase's facade cracked slightly. Willa, please. Whatever you think I did. I found the offshore accounts, I said quietly. The words dropped like stones in the sterile room. Dad suspected something was wrong before he died. He hired investigators. That hit home. Chase's face went blank, his tell when he was truly rattled. You're bluffing. I pulled out my phone, pulled up the email I'd received that morning from Dad's lawyer. Want to see the transfers? The meetings with Carlton's CEO? Did you really think Dad wouldn't protect his company? Everything I did was for us, Chase said, but his eyes darted to the door. For our future. Mrs. Harper. A nurse appeared with a wheelchair. We're ready to discharge you. I'll get the car, my mother said, giving Chase a look that could strip paint. Once she left, Chase moved closer, his voice low. Think about what you're doing. One phone call, and I can make sure you never see a penny of your inheritance. I looked at him, really looked at him, and wondered how I'd ever mistaken his confidence for strength. One phone call from me, and the SEC will have those offshore accounts. Want to test which call does more damage. The nurse waited patiently, pretending not to hear. Chase straightened his tie, another tell. This isn't over. You're right, I said, letting the nurse help me into the wheelchair. It's just beginning. As I was wheeled out, my phone buzzed with a text from Jenna. Found something big in the merger docs. Chase isn't the mastermind. Someone else has been pulling the strings. I closed my eyes, suddenly exhausted. One battle at a time. First, I needed to protect my daughter. Then I could focus on finding out who had really orchestrated my father's company's downfall. Ready to go home? My mother asked as we reached her car. No, I said, thinking of the house I'd shared with Chase, filled with expensive furniture and empty promises. But I'm ready to start fighting back. 3 days into my stay at my mother's house, Leonard Bennett showed up unannounced. I watched from the upstairs window as he charmed his way past the housekeeper, briefcase in hand, wearing the same expensive smile he'd used to convince my father to hire Chase 5 years ago. You don't have to see him, my mother said from behind me. Actually, I do. I smoothed my shirt over my growing belly, but not alone. 10 minutes later, Leonard sat across from me in my mother's study, with Jenna beside me and my mother standing by the fireplace like a sentinel. This situation has gotten out of hand, Leonard began, opening his briefcase. I have a proposal that could benefit everyone. Like the proposal to sell my father's company behind my back? I kept my voice steady, remembering Jenna's coaching. Leonard pulled out a document. Carlton Industries is offering to keep the current management team. Your father's legacy would remain intact, while Chase gets his commission and you clear gambling debts. The words hit their mark. Leonard's smile flickered. Did you really think Dad's investigators wouldn't find those too? Now see here. Leonard started to rise, but my mother's voice cut through the room. Sit down, Leonard. You're not dealing with some naive socialite anymore. He sat, adjusting his tie. Chase loves you, Willa. This pregnancy, the stress, you're not thinking clearly. Actually, Jenna interjected, sliding a folder across the table. She's thinking very clearly. These are cease and desist orders for you, Chase and Maureen. Any further attempts to contact Willa will result in harassment charges. Leonard's facade cracked. You ungrateful. A knock at the door interrupted him. The housekeeper entered, looking uncomfortable. I'm sorry, but Mrs. Bennett is here. She's quite insistent. Before anyone could respond, Maureen burst in. Mascara streaked down her face. How could you do this to Chase? He's been suspended from the firm. The firm suspended him because he violated ethics protocols, Jenna stated flatly. That's what happens when you conspire to defraud shareholders. We were trying to help. Maureen's voice rose hysterically. That company is dying. Chase was saving it. By secretly working with both sides of a hostile takeover? I stood, anger finally breaking through my careful control. By using my father's death as an opportunity? Your father was a fool, Leonard snapped, showing his true colors at last. He could have sold years ago, made us all rich, but he was too stubborn. Get out. My mother's voice could have cut glass. Both of you, out of my house. This isn't over, Leonard threatened, gathering his papers. You have no idea what you're up against. Actually, I said, pulling out my phone. I do. I played the audio I'd just recorded. Leonard's face went pale. You can't use that. Watch me. I stepped closer, letting him see the fury I'd been containing. You used my father's death, my pregnancy, my trust, all of it. Now I'm going to use everything I have to make sure you, Chase, and everyone involved pays for it. After they left, Jenna touched my arm. You okay? Your blood pressure. I'm fine. I wasn't, but I needed to focus. What did you find out about Carlton Industries? Jenna hesitated. You were right. Chase wasn't the mastermind. The person behind all this. It's your father's old partner. The one who left the company 15 years ago. My mother gasped softly. James Carlton? But he and your father were best friends. I remembered James Carlton at our family dinners, teaching me chess, attending my piano recitals. The betrayal felt like a physical blow. He approached Chase 2 years ago, Jenna continued. Used him to get inside information about the company's vulnerabilities. I sank into a chair, one hand on my stomach. My daughter kicked, as if sensing my distress. So Chase wasn't just greedy. He was a puppet. A willing puppet, my mother reminded me. I looked at the chess set in the corner, the one James Carlton had given me for my 16th birthday. Then it's time to cut his strings. I turned to Jenna. How quickly can you set up a meeting with the board? Willa, my mother warned. The doctor said to avoid stress. I stood, my decision made. Nothing would make me feel better than taking back what's mine. The Harper Industries boardroom felt colder than I remembered. Maybe it was the air conditioning, or maybe it was the way Chase sat at the far end of the table, flanked by James Carlton and a team of lawyers I didn't recognize. My father's empty chair at the head of the table seemed to watch us all. Before we begin, James Carlton said, his familiar grandfatherly smile now seeming predatory, I want to acknowledge Willa's presence. Douglas would be proud to see you taking an interest in the company. Interesting choice of words, I replied, considering you're trying to dismantle everything he built. Chase shifted uncomfortably. The board members, most of whom had known me since childhood, avoided my eyes. The merger is a lifeline, James continued smoothly. The market projections are manipulated, I interrupted, sliding folders to each board member. Just like the company's stock price over the past 6 months. The room went silent. Chase's face drained of color. That's a serious accusation, James said, his smile tightening. It's not an accusation. I nodded to Jenna, who opened her laptop. It's evidence. My father suspected someone was artificially depressing the stock. That's why he hired investigators before he died. Chase stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. Willa's pregnancy hormones. Sit down, Chase, James snapped, showing the first crack in his facade. Mrs. Harper, these conspiracy theories. are documented in these files. I continued, including your private meetings with Chase, the offshore accounts, and the shell companies you've been using to buy up shares. The boardroom door opened. My mother walked in, followed by 2 SEC agents. "What is this?" James demanded. "This," I said, standing despite my trembling legs, "is what happens when you underestimate a pregnant woman with insomnia and access to her father's files." What happened next seemed to move in slow motion. James lunged for Jenna's laptop. Chase shouted something about being set up. The SEC agents moved forward. Then pain shot through my abdomen, sharp and terrifying. "Willa." My mother's voice seemed far away. I gripped the table, spots dancing in my vision. The baby. Everything blurred. I was vaguely aware of being helped into a chair, of voices arguing, of Jenna calling an ambulance. "This is your fault," I heard Chase say. "If you hadn't pushed this." My fault. The pain made my voice shake, but the anger gave it strength. "You betrayed everything. Our marriage, my father's trust, our daughter's future. I did it for us." Chase's mask finally cracked completely. James promised me partnership, control of the merged company. We could have had everything. Everything except integrity. I gasped as another pain hit. James Carlton's smooth voice cut through the chaos. "This meeting is clearly over. Given Mrs. Harper's condition, the meeting continues," my mother announced. "The SEC has what they need, and Willa has signed proxy powers to me in case of emergency." I wanted to smile at the shock on their faces, but the pain was getting worse. The paramedics arrived, asking questions I could barely focus enough to answer. "The baby's going to be fine," Jenna whispered, squeezing my hand. "But you have to let us handle this now." As they wheeled me out, I caught a final glimpse of the boardroom. Chase stood frozen, watching me leave, his ambitions crumbling around him. James Carlton was already in handcuffs, his grandfather act replaced by cold fury. My mother sat in my father's chair, her spine straight as steel, facing down the men who had tried to steal our family's legacy. In the ambulance, between waves of pain and fear, I thought about my father, about integrity and legacy, and what really matters when everything else falls apart. "Your blood pressure's too high," the paramedic said. "Try to stay calm."
Stay calm.
While my marriage imploded, my father's company hung in the balance, and my baby's life might be at risk. I closed my eyes, feeling more alone than ever. "Dad," I whispered, "I could really use your help right now." 3 days after my hospital scare, I sat in my father's home office, surrounded by the life he'd built, when Chase walked in unannounced. He looked terrible, unshaven, suit wrinkled, the polished facade completely gone. "You shouldn't be here," I said, one hand protectively over my belly. The doctors had managed to stop the premature labor, but every moment still felt precarious. "James Carlton was arrested this morning." Chase's voice cracked. "The SEC is freezing accounts. They're calling it the biggest corporate fraud case in the state's history." "I know." I kept my voice steady. "I signed the final statements an hour ago." He moved closer, desperation rolling off him in waves. "Willa, please. I can explain everything. Can you explain why you were working against my father while he was dying? Why you used our marriage, our baby, as cover for fraud?" "I did it because I was scared." The words exploded out of him. "Do you know what it's like being married to Douglas Harper's daughter? Nothing I did was ever good enough." I stared at him, really seeing him for the first time. "So you decided to destroy everything he built." "I decided to prove I could be more than just your husband." Chase ran his hands through his disheveled hair. "James promised me control of the merged company. Real power, not just reflected glory from the Harper name. And now you have nothing. We could still fix this." He knelt beside my chair, reaching for my hand. I pulled away. "The prosecutors are offering a deal. If I testify against James." "Stop." I opened my father's desk drawer and pulled out an envelope. "I found this in Dad's safe. It's dated 2 days before he died." Chase went very still as I unfolded the letter. "Dear Willa," I read aloud, "if you're reading this, then my suspicions about Chase and James were correct. I'm sorry I won't be there to help you face this, but I know you're stronger than anyone realizes, including yourself. Willa. He knew. I continued, my voice gaining strength. He knew what you were doing, but he wanted me to discover the truth on my own, to learn to trust my instincts. Your father was a stubborn old man who built something real. I cut him off. While you and James were plotting to steal it, he was teaching me how to protect it. Chase stood, his facade cracking completely. So that's it? Everything we had means nothing. It meant everything to me. I placed my father's letter back in the drawer. That's why your betrayal worked so well. The company will still fail without the merger, he said, a last desperate attempt. You're throwing away your inheritance out of spite. I smiled for the first time. Actually, while you were busy with your schemes, I was talking to our European partners. They're investing in a complete modernization of our production lines. The board approved it this morning. The color drained from his face. But James said they weren't interested. James lied, just like you did. I stood carefully, one hand on the desk for support. The divorce papers are with my lawyer. So is my statement to the SEC. You're really going to do this? His voice turned cold. Destroy me? The father of your child.
No, Chase.
You destroyed yourself. I walked to the door, then turned back. My father left you a message too. It's in the envelope. I waited while he opened it with trembling hands and read the single line. I gave you a chance to choose integrity. You chose greed. Chase crumpled the paper, his carefully constructed world collapsing around him. Willa, wait. Goodbye, Chase. I stepped into the hallway where Jenna and my mother waited. The SEC agents are in the living room. They'll want to talk to you about those offshore accounts. As we left, I heard Chase calling my name, his voice echoing through the house where I'd grown up, where I'd fallen in love, where I'd finally learned to stand on my own. Are you okay? My mother asked softly. I touched my stomach, feeling my daughter kick, strong and determined, just like her grandfather. I will be. We both will be. 6 months later, I stood in my father's office, now my office, holding my newborn daughter while watching Harper Industries' stock price climb on the digital display. The European partnership had exceeded everyone's expectations, and the company was stronger than ever. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. The board meeting starts in 10 minutes, Jenna said, then smiled at the baby. How's little Douglas doing? She prefers Dougie. I corrected, adjusting my daughter's position. And she's helping me review quarterly reports. The newspaper on my desk caught my eye, a small headline about Chase's sentencing. 3 years, reduced from 5 for his testimony against James Carlton. His parents had fled to Florida, leaving behind a wake of unpaid debts and broken relationships. Have you read his letter? Jenna asked, noticing me looking at the paper. I nodded toward the unopened envelope on my desk. Chase's handwriting, once so familiar, now looked like a stranger's. Some things are better left unsaid. My mother appeared in the doorway, impeccably dressed for her role as interim CEO. Ready? The modernization proposal needs your final approval. As I gathered my things, a photo fell from my father's old diary, Dad and me at my first piano recital, both of us beaming. Behind it, in his handwriting, success isn't about winning, Willa. It's about knowing what's worth fighting for. He would be proud, my mother said softly, not just of saving the company, but of how you did it. Without revenge, I added, understanding finally hitting me. That's what he wanted me to learn. Anyone can destroy things. Building something better, that's the real victory. The boardroom looked different now. New faces mixed with old, the company evolving while keeping its core values. As I took my seat, Dougie sleeping peacefully in her carrier beside me, I thought about cycles of betrayal and redemption, of endings and beginnings. Before we start, I said, addressing the board, I want to announce a new initiative. We're establishing the Douglas Harper Foundation for Ethics in Business. Full scholarships for students who demonstrate integrity and innovation. I saw approval in the older board members' eyes, understanding in the new ones. This was how you built a legacy, not by tearing others down, but by creating opportunities for something better. After the meeting, I found another note from my father, tucked inside his old desk calendar. The hardest part of success isn't achieving it, it's deciding what kind of person you want to be when you get there. My phone buzzed with a text from Maureen. Chase asks about the baby. Please, just one photo? I deleted it without responding. Some bridges stay burned, not out of hatred, but because building new ones serves us better. MS. Harper. My assistant appeared. The new production line supervisors are here for training. And your mother mentioned something about piano lessons for when Dougie's older? I smiled, remembering Sunday afternoons at the piano with Dad, his patience as I learned each note. Schedule both. And add weekly ethics seminars for all management levels. Later, as I drove home with Dougie, I passed the house where Chase and I had lived. New owners had painted it, planted different flowers, changed it into something new, just as I had changed my father's company into something that honored his values while facing forward. At a red light, I finally opened Chase's letter. Inside was a single line, "I'm sorry I chose wrong." I let the wind take it through the car window, watching it disappear into the evening sky. Dougie stirred, her tiny hand gripping my finger with surprising strength. "Ready to go home, little one?" I asked, thinking of the piano waiting in our new house, of Sunday afternoons to come, of lessons about integrity that can't be taught with words alone. The light turned green, and we moved forward, leaving the past where it belonged, not forgotten, but transformed into something wiser, stronger, and ultimately more valuable than revenge could ever be. The scent of peaches and cinnamon filled my kitchen as I pulled the cobbler from the oven, my hands trembling slightly despite my best efforts to stay calm. After 30 years of performing open-heart surgeries, you'd think meeting my future daughter-in-law wouldn't rattle my nerves. Yet here I was, a retired surgeon turned hospital administrator, fighting the urge to check my reflection in the microwave door for the 100th time. My name is Lila, and this was the moment everything started to unravel, though I didn't know it then. The doorbell chimed, and I heard Ethan's familiar voice mixing with a woman's laugh outside. I smoothed down my apron and took a deep breath. This was just dinner, I told myself. Just meeting the woman who'd captured my son's heart after only 6 months of dating. I opened the door to find Ethan beaming, his arm around a striking woman with perfectly styled blonde hair and a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Mom, this is Marissa," he said, practically glowing with pride. Marissa's smile was dazzling, practiced. "Dr. Foster, it's wonderful to finally meet you." Her eyes darted past me, scanning my modest rental home. Something flickered across her face, disappointment maybe, before her smile reset. "Please call me Lila," I said, ushering them inside. "I hope you like peach cobbler. It's an old family recipe." "Oh, how quaint," Marissa said, her tone making the words sound like anything but a compliment. "I usually avoid sugar, but I'm sure I can make an exception." As I led them to the living room, I caught Marissa examining the family photos on my walls. "These must be from before the divorce?" she asked innocently. "Ethan mentioned you used to have quite a lovely house in Beverly Hills." My son shifted uncomfortably. "Marissa?" "It's fine," I said, though something in my chest tightened. "Yes, we downsized after the divorce. But this place suits me just fine." "Of course." Marissa smiled that perfect smile again. Though it must be quite an adjustment, going from a successful surgeon to,
What is it you do now?
hospital administration. "Mom's the chief operating officer at St. Mary's," Ethan interjected proudly. "She oversees the entire surgical department." "How fascinating," Marissa said, but her attention had already drifted to her phone. "Oh, darling, remember we have that charity gala at 8. We should probably keep dinner brief." I busied myself in the kitchen, plating the cobbler while their whispered conversation drifted in from the living room. "Can't believe you didn't tell me about the money situation." "Doesn't matter, Marissa. Mom's amazing at what she does. Just think we should discuss these things." My hands stilled over the dessert plates. Something about Marissa's tone, the calculated way she'd asked about my past, set off warning bells I couldn't quite silence. I'd spent decades reading people's vital signs. Right now, everything about this woman screamed danger. When I returned with the cobbler, Marissa was showing Ethan something on her phone, their heads close together. "I've already found the perfect venue," she was saying. "It's exclusive, very modern. We'll need to book it soon if we want a spring wedding." I nearly dropped the plates. "Wedding? You're engaged." Ethan looked up, guilt washing over his face. "I was going to tell you tonight, Mom. We wanted you to be the first to know." Marissa held up her left hand, a massive diamond catching the light. "We're thinking April. Small ceremony, very intimate. Just immediate family and our closest friends." Her eyes met mine, challenge lurking behind the sweetness. "We wouldn't want anything too traditional." As I watched my son beam at this woman he barely knew, I felt something shift in my chest. Not the familiar ache of letting go, but something sharper. Something that told me this was just the beginning of a very dangerous game. And I had no choice but to play. I've spent countless hours in operating rooms, making split-second decisions that determined whether someone lived or died. But sitting in this upscale bridal boutique, watching Marissa dismiss every suggestion I made with a practiced smile, was its own kind of surgery, the slow, painful extraction of my role in my son's life. "What about this one?" I held up a photo of a classic wedding arch draped with my grandmother's antique lace. "It's been in our family for 4 generations." Marissa barely glanced up from her phone. "Oh, we're going for more of a modern aesthetic. Clean lines, minimalist design. Nothing." She paused, that smile flickering across her face. Dated. Ethan sat beside her, scrolling through venue options on his tablet. "The lace is beautiful, Mom, but Marissa's right. The Crystal Palace has this amazing geometric arch that would match their whole design concept." "The Crystal Palace?" I tried to keep my voice neutral. "Isn't that the new venue that costs?" "Money isn't an issue." Marissa cut in smoothly. "Daddy's handling everything." She turned to the wedding planner, a rail-thin woman named Victoria, who looked like she subsisted entirely on espresso and judgment. "Show her the tablescape concept." Victoria produced a tablet displaying stark white tables with chrome and glass centerpieces. No flowers, no warmth, no trace of the joyful family celebrations I'd always imagined for my son's wedding. "We're limiting the guest list to 200, Marissa continued. "Very exclusive. Just immediate family and our closest circle." 200 is immediate family? I couldn't help asking. "Well, we have to invite Daddy's business associates and my sorority sisters and—" "What about the Hendersons?" I asked. "They've been like second parents to Ethan since he was 5. Marissa's perfectly manicured nails tapped against her phone screen. "The guest list is actually pretty much finalized. We had to make some hard decisions to keep it curated." I watched my son's face, searching for any sign that this bothered him. But he just smiled that same besotted smile, completely under her spell. "Now, about the mother-son dance," Victoria interjected, consulting her clipboard. "We're thinking of skipping the traditional." "Skipping it?" My voice cracked slightly. I'd been practicing that dance with Ethan since he was tall enough to stand on my feet. "The timeline is very tight," Marissa explained. "And we want to maximize dancing time for all the guests. Besides," she added with a laugh that felt like ice water down my spine, "we wouldn't want to risk any unpredictable moments." The implication hung in the air like smoke. My divorce, my downsizing, my supposed fall from grace, all carefully catalogued weaknesses she could exploit. "Mom," Ethan finally looked up, concern creasing his forehead. "You okay?" I forced a smile, years of maintaining composure in crisis situations coming in handy. "Of course, sweetheart. Whatever makes your day special." Marissa's phone buzzed.
Oh.
"The florist is ready for us at the Crystal Palace. Victoria, can you handle the rest of the details with Dr. Foster? Ethan and I should really get going." "Actually," Victoria said, not meeting my eyes, "we've got everything covered. No need to trouble Dr. Foster further." I watched them gather their things, Marissa efficiently herding my son toward the door. Just before they left, she turned back. "Oh, and Dr. Foster? About the rehearsal dinner. We've decided to have it at Le Cirque. Black tie, of course. I hope that won't be an issue. The door chimed as they exited, leaving me alone with Victoria, who was already packing up her tablets and samples. I sat there, my hands clenched in my lap, remembering how it felt to hold a scalpel, to have that precise control over life and death. But this wasn't the operating room. This was psychological warfare, and Marissa was winning.
For now.
As I drove home, my phone lit up with a text from Ethan. "Thanks for understanding about the dance, Mom. Marissa just wants everything to be perfect."
Perfect.
The word echoed in my mind like a warning bell. I'd seen enough perfect facades crack under pressure to know what usually lurked beneath them. And I was starting to think it was time to apply some pressure of my own. The Crystal Palace's marble floors echoed with my footsteps as I searched for the restroom during the venue walkthrough. That's when I heard them. Marissa's voice floating from behind a partially closed door, followed by another woman's whispered response. I shouldn't have stopped. Shouldn't have listened. But 30 years of medical practice taught me to trust my instincts, and something in their tone made me freeze. "You can't keep avoiding this conversation forever, Marissa." The voice was sharp, concerned. "What happens when he finds out?" "He won't find out, Tessa. That's the point." Marissa's laugh had none of its usual polish. "By the time the wedding's over, it won't matter anyway." "You mean by the time you have access to his trust fund?" My hand gripped the wall, steadying myself as Marissa continued. "Do you know what it's like being one bad quarter away from losing everything? Daddy's company is hemorrhaging money. Once this wedding happens, Ethan's family money becomes our safety net. But you don't love him." It wasn't a question. Love doesn't pay bills, Tess. Besides, he's
Nice.
safe. The kind of guy who'll never question why his wife needs another credit card. And his mother? The doctor? A scoff. Please. She's living in a rental after her divorce. She's hardly the society powerhouse she used to be. A few more subtle hints about her situation, and Ethan will distance himself naturally. Men always choose their wives over their mothers. My chest tightened, the familiar pressure of an impending storm. I'd felt it before surgery's gone wrong, before my ex-husband's confession of infidelity, before every major catastrophe in my life. What about the prenup his family's lawyer mentioned? Already handled. I convinced Ethan it would hurt my feelings, make it seem like he doesn't trust me. He's talking to the lawyer tomorrow about dropping it. The sound of heels clicking on marble sent me ducking behind a massive floral arrangement. Marissa and a redhead, Tessa, emerged, adjusting their designer dresses. "Just promise me you know what you're doing," Tessa said, touching Marissa's arm. "Playing with people's hearts. It has a way of backfiring." "Trust me," Marissa smiled, all teeth and determination. "In 6 months, I'll be Mrs. Ethan Foster, with access to generations of old money. His mother will be a distant memory, and everyone wins. Except Ethan. He gets a trophy wife who knows how to navigate his social circle, better than some public school teacher who shops at Target." They disappeared around the corner, their laughter fading like smoke. I stood there, surrounded by overpriced flowers and crystalline chandeliers, feeling the weight of every decision that had led to this moment. My phone buzzed, a text from Ethan. "Where are you, Mom? Marissa wants to show you the ballroom setup." I stared at his message, remembering the little boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who trusted me to keep him safe from everything scary in the world. Now here I was, holding the lightning that could destroy his happiness. But was it really happiness? Or just another surgery gone wrong that I needed to fix? Making my way to the ballroom, I pulled up my browser and typed, "Marissa Caldwell background check." Then, after a moment's hesitation, "Charles Caldwell Company financial troubles." "Sorry, got turned around," I announced, pushing through the ornate doors. "This place is quite something." Marissa beamed, her arm linked through Ethan's. "Isn't it perfect? Just like a fairy tale." I smiled back, channeling every poker face I'd ever worn in the operating room. Yes, quite the story we're creating here. Because that's what it was, a story. And like any good surgeon, I knew sometimes you had to break things to heal them properly. I just hope my son would forgive me for the fractures to come. The background check results sat heavy in my laptop, like a tumor I'd just discovered on a scan. 3 failed businesses. 2 bankruptcies. A string of wealthy fiancés who mysteriously backed out of engagements. The Caldwell family fortune was a house of cards, and Marissa was desperately searching for a safety net.
My son was that net.
I closed the laptop as the hospital cafeteria chair across from me scraped against the floor. Hank dropped into it, sliding a coffee my way. After 30 years of friendship and countless surgeries together, he could read my face like a medical chart. "You look like you did before the Jensen transplant," he said, stirring his coffee. "The one where we found the hidden clot." "Marissa's using him, Hank. I have proof." He leaned back, his surgical precision evident even in the way he chose his words. "And you're sure this isn't about feeling replaced?" I heard her admit it. "She's after his trust fund. Her father's company is failing, and she—" My voice caught as a group of residents walked past. "She doesn't love him." "Have you told him?" The coffee burned my throat. "How can I? You know Ethan. He'd never believe she could be so calculating. He'd think I was trying to sabotage his happiness because I'm lonely or bitter about my divorce." "Are you?" "Hank." He held up his hands. "Just playing devil's advocate. Like we used to do before difficult procedures, remember? Consider all angles before making the first cut." My phone buzzed, another text from Ethan. "Hey Mom, Marissa suggested we move the rehearsal dinner to the yacht club. Hope that works for you." The yacht club, where membership cost more than my annual salary. Where I'd once been a member, before the divorce stripped away the veneer of wealth that Marissa so desperately craved. "She's isolating him," I said, showing Hank the text. "Every event, every decision, it's all designed to emphasize the gap between his world and mine. Between who I used to be and who I am now." "And who are you now, Lila?" The question hit like a defibrillator shock. "I'm his mother. I'm supposed to protect him." From what? Making his own mistakes. From being used. Several heads turned our way, and I lowered my voice. "You didn't hear her, Hank. The way she talked about him, like he was just a convenient ATM with a pulse." Hank's expression softened. "Remember Tommy Chin? The patient who refused to believe his heart was failing until he collapsed in his daughter's wedding. What's your point? Sometimes people have to hit rock bottom before they'll see the truth, even when that truth is killing them." My pager buzzed. A board meeting in 10 minutes. As I gathered my things, Hank caught my arm. "Whatever you're planning, be careful. Sometimes trying to prevent a crash causes one instead." I thought about his words all through the meeting, barely registering the budget discussions and staffing reports. My phone lit up with another message, this time from an unknown number. "Dr. Foster? This is Tessa Green. We need to talk about Marissa. Can we meet?" My heart raced. Marissa's friend from the Crystal Palace, the one who'd questioned her motives. This could be the evidence I needed, the smoking gun that would open Ethan's eyes. Or it could be a trap. I stared at the message until the screen went dark, reflecting my tired face. In surgery, there was always a clear protocol, a right way to proceed. But this was like operating blindfolded, never knowing if the next cut would save the patient or sever an artery.
Dr.
"Foster?" My assistant poked her head in. "Your son's here to see you." I quickly closed the message. "Send him in." Ethan appeared, beaming. "Mom, great news. Marissa's father is insisting on paying for your yacht club membership as a wedding gift. Isn't that amazing?" I forced a smile, feeling the weight of everything I knew pressing against my chest like a time bomb. "Amazing," I echoed, watching my son's happy face and wondering how much damage the truth would do. My fingers hovered over my phone, over Tessa's message, as I made the hardest decision of my life. Sometimes, to save a heart, you have to break it first. I shouldn't have come to Ethan's birthday party. The invitation never arrived, probably lost in the mail, Marissa had said sweetly when I called to ask about it. But mothers don't need invitations to their children's birthdays. At least they didn't used to. The Caldwell mansion loomed before me, every window blazing with light, music and laughter spilling onto the manicured lawn. I clutched the small wrapped package, a vintage watch that had belonged to Ethan's grandfather, and forced myself up the steps. A server opened the door, his expression shifting from professional welcome to uncertainty when I gave my name. "I'm sorry, you're not on the list, but let me check with Mom." Ethan appeared behind him, champagne in hand, his face a mix of surprise and something else. Embarrassment? "What are you doing here?" "Happy birthday, sweetheart." I held out the package like a peace offering. "I thought since we couldn't do our usual dinner." "Right, yeah, of course." He glanced over his shoulder, then quickly ushered me inside. "Marissa just organized this last-minute thing." The foyer opened into a sea of designer dresses and tailored suits. Young professionals with perfect hair and practiced laughs, all holding crystal flutes of champagne. No one I recognized. No one from our old life, our real life. "Dr. Foster." Marissa's voice cut through the crowd. She glided over, elegant in a black dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "What a surprise. We thought you'd be too busy with hospital work to join us." "I'd never miss my son's birthday." "Of course not." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Ethan, darling, your father's business partner wants to discuss the trust fund arrangements." "Mom, will you be okay for a minute?" Ethan asked, already being pulled away. I nodded, watching him disappear into the crowd. A server offered me champagne, and I took it, needing something to do with my hands. "I can't believe she showed up." The whispered voice came from behind a massive floral arrangement. I recognized it as Tessa's. "Sure, not so loud," Marissa replied. "This is actually perfect. When she sees how well Ethan fits into our world, maybe she'll finally get the hint and back off." "You really think she'll just disappear?" "She won't have a choice. Once we're married, all those cute little family traditions will have to go. No more Sunday dinners, no more holiday cooking sessions. Ethan needs to focus on networking, not playing house with mommy." "And the trust fund discussion?" "Already handled. The papers are being drawn up to add me as a co-trustee. Just in case anything happens to Ethan, you know?" My champagne glass trembled. I set it down before it could shatter. "Dr. Foster?" A young woman touched my arm, dark-haired, wearing a simple blue dress that stood out among the designer labels. "I'm Zoe. I work with Ethan at the foundation. He talks about you all the time." "Does he?" My voice sounded distant to my own ears. "Are you okay? You look pale." "I just need some air." I pushed through the crowd toward the terrace, but Marissa's voice followed me. "Oh, good. She's leaving." Honestly, it's embarrassing. She doesn't even try to fit in anymore. The night air hit my face like a slap. I gripped the stone balustrade, trying to steady myself. Behind me, the party continued. My son's birthday celebration that I hadn't been invited to, where his fiancée was plotting to erase me from his life. "Dr. Foster?" It was Zoe again, holding out my forgotten gift. "You dropped this." I stared at the carefully wrapped package, remembering how Ethan's eyes used to light up at presents, how he'd save the paper, how he'd hug me so tight I could feel his heartbeat. "Would you give this to him?" I asked. Tell him I had an emergency at the hospital." "Are you sure? He'd want you to stay." "Would he?" I looked back through the windows at my son, laughing with Marissa's friends, fitting perfectly into her world. I'm not so sure anymore. I drove home in silence, my surgeon's hand steady on the wheel even as my world spun out of control. I had a decision to make. Let Marissa win, watch my son disappear into her carefully constructed fantasy, or fight back, knowing I might lose him anyway. My phone lit up with Tessa's message again. "We need to talk about Marissa." "This time," I replied. "When and where?" The knock on my door came at exactly 9 a.m., precise as a scalpel cut. I'd been expecting it since my meeting with Tessa yesterday, where she'd revealed the full extent of Marissa's plans, the trust fund manipulation, the prenup sabotage, the carefully orchestrated isolation of my son. I opened the door to find Marissa, immaculate in a cream-colored suit, holding a leather briefcase that probably cost more than my car. "Dr. Foster," she said, stepping past me without waiting for an invitation. "We need to discuss the wedding. Or, more specifically, your role in it." My phone sat on the coffee table, its voice recorder already running. A trick I'd learned from years of medical liability concerns: always document the important conversations. Would you like some coffee? I asked, playing for time. Let's not pretend this is a social call. She opened her briefcase, removing a thick envelope. I have a proposition that will benefit everyone. Everyone meaning you? Her smile tightened. Inside this envelope is a cashier's check for $500,000. It's yours, in exchange for missing the wedding. Take a trip, visit friends, I don't care. Just be anywhere but there. The envelope landed on my coffee table with a soft thud. You're trying to buy me off? I'm trying to spare everyone the embarrassment of your situation. She gestured vaguely at my modest living room. Ethan's moving up in the world. He doesn't need constant reminders of where he came from. Where he came from? My voice shook. I raised him alone after his father left. I worked 80-hour weeks to put him through college. Yes, you are a wonderful mother. She waved dismissively. But it's time to let go. Let him evolve beyond Sunday dinners and hometown nostalgia. Into what?
Your puppet?
Her eyes hardened. Into someone worthy of his trust fund. Someone who understands that success requires cutting dead weight. Is that what I am? Dead weight. You're a liability. She leaned forward, dropping the polite facade. Do you think my friends want to socialize with someone who lives in a rental? Who works in administration after failing as a surgeon? I didn't fail. You lost everything in the divorce. Your house, your status, your place in society. And now you're trying to drag Ethan down with you. My hands clenched. You don't know anything about my son. I know he's too nice to tell you the truth. That your constant presence, your little family traditions, they're holding him back. This check. She tapped the envelope. Consider it severance pay. Get out. Think carefully, Dr. Foster. Fight me on this, and I'll make sure Ethan sees you for what you really are: a bitter, jealous woman who can't accept that her son has outgrown her. You're threatening me? I'm offering you a dignified exit. Take it, or I'll make sure every society page in town knows about your fall from grace. How you lost your surgical career after that patient died. That's a lie. Truth is irrelevant. Perception is everything. She stood, smoothing her perfect suit. You have 24 hours to decide. After that, the offer expires and I stop playing nice. She walked to the door, then paused. Oh, and that lovely girl from the party?
Zoe?
I've already arranged her transfer to another department. Can't have any sympathetic allies around. The door closed behind her with a soft click. I sat there, staring at the envelope, feeling the walls close in. Everything I'd gathered, the background checks, Tessa's revelations, the recorded conversations, suddenly felt meaningless against Marissa's ruthless determination. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. Mom, Marissa told me about your conversation. Why are you making this so difficult? Maybe some distance would be good for everyone. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. She'd beaten me to him, twisted the narrative before I could even fight back. Just like she'd planned. I picked up the envelope, feeling its weight, the price tag for my son's future. Inside was enough money to start over somewhere else, to avoid watching Marissa systematically erase me from Ethan's life.
My phone buzzed again.
This time from Zoe. Dr. Foster, I'm being transferred next week. But before I go, there's something you need to know about Marissa's past. Something not in any background check. I stared at the message, then at the envelope, then at the still-running voice recorder that had captured every word of Marissa's threats. Sometimes, the only way to save a patient is to let them flatline first. The rehearsal dinner at Le Cirque sparkled with crystal and pretense. I sat at my assigned table, far from Ethan, naturally, watching Marissa work the room like a conductor leading her orchestra of lies. My phone felt heavy in my clutch, loaded with everything. The recorded bribe, Tessa's revelations, and most importantly, what Zoe had discovered about Marissa's past. 2 previous engagements, 2 other trust funds, 2 families who'd narrowly escaped her web. Marissa clinked her glass, rising for yet another toast. I'd like to thank everyone for being here tonight, especially those who truly support our vision for the future. Her eyes found mine, a subtle warning in their depths. I touched my own glass, feeling the weight of the moment. Years of surgical training had taught me timing was everything. Actually, I stood, my voice carrying across the sudden silence. I'd like to make a toast too. Ethan's face registered surprise, then concern. Marissa's smile froze. To new beginnings, I said, pulling out my phone. And to truth. Mother, Ethan started, but I pressed play before anyone could stop me. Marissa's voice filled the room. $500,000. It's yours, in exchange for missing the wedding. The recording continued, each word dropping like a stone into still water. Her threats, her contempt, her calculated manipulation of my son, all laid bare before her carefully curated audience. Turn that off, Marissa commanded, but her voice shook.
Why?
Isn't this what you wanted? Everyone knowing the truth about our situation. Ethan stood, his face pale. Mom, what is this? Ask your fiancée about her other engagements, I said quietly. Ask her about the Hamilton family in Boston, or the Pierces in Chicago. Ask her why they called off their weddings just weeks before she could access their trust funds. You're lying, Marissa snapped, but her perfect facade was cracking. Zoe found them before you had her transferred. They're here tonight, actually. I gestured to a couple near the back, the surprise guests I'd arranged through Hank's connections. Would you like to hear their stories? The room erupted in whispers. Marissa's father stood, swaying slightly. Is this true? The company money, Daddy don't, is gone, I finished. Just like it was going to be after you gained control of Ethan's trust fund. Ethan, Marissa turned to my son, reaching for him. Baby, she's trying to manipulate you. She's jealous, bitter. Stop. Ethan's voice cut through the chaos. He was staring at his phone, where Tessa, bless her guilty conscience, had just sent him screenshots of text messages revealing Marissa's entire plan. I can explain, Marissa started, but Ethan stepped back. The prenup you said would hurt your feelings? The one you convinced me to drop? Was that part of the plan too? The silence was deafening. You never loved me, did you? His voice cracked, and my heart broke for him. Marissa's composure finally shattered. Love doesn't pay bills. You don't understand what it's like to lose everything, to become nothing. Like I did. I interrupted softly. When I chose to leave my surgical career to raise my son alone. When I downsized to put him through college. That kind of nothing. The Hamilton couple stood up. She did the same thing to our son, Mrs. Hamilton announced. Right down to the prenup manipulation. Chaos erupted. Guests began leaving, phones recording everything. Marissa's father demanded answers about company funds. And through it all, my son stood frozen, his world unraveling thread by carefully constructed thread. The wedding's off, he finally said, his voice carrying over the commotion. It's over, Marissa. She turned to me, mascara tracking down her perfect face. You've ruined everything. No, I replied, thinking of all the patience I'd saved over the years. I just prevented another catastrophic failure. As security escorted a screaming Marissa out, I caught sight of Zoe quietly supporting Ethan near the exit. Their eyes met briefly, and in that moment, I saw something real, a genuine connection untainted by manipulation or greed. Sometimes healing requires cutting away the disease to save the heart. And my son's heart, though wounded, would heal stronger than before. 6 months after the rehearsal dinner that never became a wedding, I found myself back in my kitchen, making Sunday dinner. The familiar rhythm of chopping vegetables and measuring spices felt like coming home after a long surgery. Comfortable, right? The doorbell rang just as I was sliding the lasagna into the oven. Through the window, I could see Ethan's car in the driveway, and beside it, Zoe's modest sedan. They'd been spending more time together since the aftermath, first as friends, then as something more. Mom, Ethan called out, using his key for the first time since the Marissa debacle. We brought wine. And, something else you should see. They entered the kitchen, Zoe carrying a bottle of my favorite red, Ethan holding what looked like a letter. My heart skipped. I recognized the expensive stationery. Marissa sent this to my office, he said quietly. Asked me to make sure you read it. I wiped my hands on my apron, taking the envelope. Have you? He shook his head. It's addressed to you. Besides, I've had enough Marissa revelations for one lifetime. Zoe touched his arm gently, and the simple gesture contained more genuine affection than all of Marissa's calculated displays ever had. We'll open the wine, she said, leading him to the living room. I unfolded the letter, noting the slight tremor in the usually perfect handwriting.
Dr. Foster.
Daddy lost everything. The company, the house, our reputation. Turns out I learned my skills at manipulation from the master. He'd been running a Ponzi scheme for years. Everything I thought I was protecting never really existed. I'm writing this from a studio apartment in Phoenix, working as a junior account manager. Real work for the first time in my life. It's humbling. I won't ask for forgiveness. What I did to Ethan, to you, to those other families, it's unforgivable. But I want you to know that you were right. About everything. About what really matters. I saw a mother and daughter having coffee next door yesterday. They were laughing over some shared joke, and I realized I've never had that. Never valued it. I was so busy chasing status that I missed the real wealth right in front of me. Thank you for stopping me before I destroyed another life. Including my own. Marissa.
P.S.
I heard about Ethan and Zoe.
She's what I pretended to be.
He deserves that kind of real. I folded the letter, feeling an unexpected wave of, not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. How many times had I seen desperate people make terrible choices in my operating room? Mom, Ethan appeared in the doorway. You okay? Better than okay. I smiled, tucking the letter away. How about we eat in the dining room today? I think it's time to bring out Grandma's old china. Later, as we sat around my modest dining table, Ethan laughing at one of Zoe's hospital stories, Hank dropping by with his famous garlic bread, wine flowing freely, I realized something profound. Marissa had been right about one thing. Perception isn't reality. But she'd been looking through the wrong end of the telescope. Real wealth wasn't in trust funds or social status. It was here, in Sunday dinners and genuine laughter, in the messy, imperfect connections that no amount of money could buy. I've been thinking, I said during a lull in conversation, about taking that trip to Italy I always talked about. Maybe in the spring. Really? Ethan's eyes lit up. What brought this on? I looked around my small dining room, at the faces of people who loved me for who I was, not what I represented. Let's just say I finally understand the difference between what we have and what we own. Zoe raised her glass. To new adventures? To real wealth, I corrected, thinking of Marissa in her Phoenix apartment, finally learning the same lesson. As we clinked glasses, I caught sight of my reflection in the window, not a fallen society doctor, not a bitter divorcee, but simply a woman who'd chosen truth over pretense, love over status, and found herself richer for it. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction, but reconstruction. Building something genuine from the ashes of what was fake. And sometimes, healing comes in unexpected ways, for unexpected people. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, tucked between a pizza flyer and my overdue electric bill. No return address, just my name written in careful, deliberate strokes that seemed almost familiar. I might have tossed it with the junk mail if not for the weight of the envelope, too heavy for a simple note. My name is Sloan, and until that moment, I thought I had my life figured out. I was wrong. Standing in my tiny apartment kitchen, I sliced open the envelope with trembling fingers. A stack of documents spilled onto my counter, along with a handwritten note that made my stomach drop. Your mother isn't who she claims to be. She's after your inheritance, and she's using Tessa to get it. Watch your back. I read it 3 times, trying to make sense of the words. My mother, Marla, had waltzed back into our lives 6 months ago after a 12-year absence, full of apologies and promises. Dad welcomed her back with open arms. My 14-year-old half-sister, Tessa, was thrilled to finally have her mom around. And me? I'd been keeping my distance, spending more time with the animals at the zoo where I volunteer than with my newly reunited family. The documents were bank statements showing suspicious transfers from my father's accounts to offshore locations. Dates, amounts, account numbers, all meticulously highlighted. My hands shook as I spread them across the counter. My phone buzzed. Dad's face lit up the screen. "Hey, sweetie," he said when I answered. "Your mother's making her famous lasagna tonight. Coming over." I stared at the papers in front of me.
I don't know, Dad.
"I have this job interview tomorrow at the zoo." "The zookeeper position? That's perfect for you." His voice softened. "But your mother really wants you here. Tessa too. They miss you." The guilt in his voice was familiar. He'd been trying to bridge the gap between Marla and me since she returned. I closed my eyes, remembering the last family dinner. Marla's perfectly practiced smile, Tessa's hero worship gaze, Dad's desperate attempts to pretend we were one big happy family. "I'll try," I said, knowing I wouldn't. After hanging up, I messaged Jonah, my online friend who worked at another zoo across the country. "Got a weird letter today. Someone's trying to stir up trouble about Mom." His response was quick. "The one who abandoned you? Maybe there's something to it." I started to type a defense, then stopped. Why was I defending her? Because Dad wanted me to? Because it was easier than admitting I still didn't trust her? My laptop chimed with an email notification. Another message, this time from an encrypted address. "Check the trust fund paperwork from 2010. She's already tried this before. The hair on my neck stood up. I slammed the laptop shut, but not before catching a glimpse of my reflection in the dark screen. Wide-eyed, pale, looking exactly like the scared 10-year-old girl who woke up one morning to find her mother gone. The animals at the zoo were easier than people. They didn't pretend to be something they weren't. A snake would strike if it felt threatened. A lion would roar before it attacked. But people smiled while they plotted, hugged while they betrayed. My phone buzzed again, Tessa this time. "Mom's asking about the trust fund paperwork Dad gave you last month. Did you sign it?" I stared at the message, then at the mysterious letter, then back at my phone. The pieces were starting to fit together, forming a picture I didn't want to see. "Not yet," I typed back, my fingers hovering over the send button. "Tell her I'll bring it to dinner tomorrow." But I knew I wouldn't be going to dinner. Instead, I'd be making some calls, starting with Dad's old lawyer. Because if there's one thing working with animals had taught me, it's that when something feels wrong, it usually is. And right now, everything felt wrong. I hadn't planned on going to my father's house that evening, but the trust fund paperwork was burning a hole in my messenger bag. Standing in his driveway, I watched Marla through the kitchen window, coaching Tessa on her homework. They looked so normal, so perfect, it made my skin crawl. My phone buzzed with another message from Jonah. "Did you call the lawyer yet?" Before I could respond, the front door swung open. Tessa stood there, arms crossed, looking more like our father than ever. "Are you just going to stand there all night?" I was admiring Mom's roses. I lied, nodding toward the wilting flower beds I used to tend with Elise, my former stepmother. The ones Marla had promised to revive but hadn't touched. Tessa rolled her eyes. "Whatever. Mom wants the paperwork." I followed her inside, the familiar scent of home now tainted with Marla's expensive perfume. Dad was in his usual spot, reading glasses perched on his nose as he reviewed work documents at the dining room table. "Sloan." He brightened immediately. "You came, just dropping something off." I pulled out the trust fund papers, watching Marla's reflection in the window. She'd gone still, pretending to focus on Tessa's textbook while clearly straining to hear our conversation. "Actually," I said, louder than necessary, "I had some questions about these documents." Marla's head snapped up. "Oh? What kind of questions?" "Just trying to understand why we're restructuring the trust now." I kept my voice casual, but my heart was racing, especially the part about transferring management rights. Dad looked confused. "What management rights?" "It's a standard update," Marla cut in smoothly, abandoning her post at the kitchen counter. "The lawyer suggested it, remember? To protect the girls' interests." "Which lawyer?" I asked. "Because I called Mitchell's office today, and he hasn't handled our accounts since last year." The room went quiet. Tessa's pencil stopped scratching against her paper. Dad's confusion deepened into concern. I hired new representation, Marla said quickly. Someone more, specialized in family trusts. Without telling Dad? Sloan, Dad warned, but I could see the doubt creeping into his expression. Marla's phone rang, breaking the tension. She glanced at the screen, and something flickered across her face. Fear? She excused herself, hurrying upstairs with the phone clutched to her chest. I don't understand why you're being so difficult, Tessa snapped at me. Mom's trying to help. Like she helped when she left us? The words came out before I could stop them. That's enough, Dad said firmly. But Tessa was already pushing away from the table, tears in her eyes. You're just jealous because she loves me more, Tessa shouted, running upstairs. I stood there, feeling like I was 10 years old again, watching my family fracture. But this time was different. This time I had proof something was wrong. From upstairs, Marla's voice drifted down. I know. I'm handling it. She doesn't suspect anything. Dad was rubbing his temples, a gesture I recognized from countless difficult moments in our past. Sloan, honey, I know this adjustment has been hard. Did you actually read these documents? I interrupted, sliding them across the table. Really read them? He picked them up, squinting through his reading glasses. As his eyes moved down the page, his frown deepened. I should have Mitchell look these over, he muttered. You should. I hesitated, then added, and maybe check your bank statements too. His head snapped up, but before he could respond, Marla reappeared, her composure slightly cracked around the edges. Everything okay? I asked innocently. Perfect, she replied, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. Will you be staying for dinner?
Can't.
Job interview tomorrow, remember? As I left, I heard Marla asking Dad about the papers, her voice honey-sweet and persuasive. But I'd seen the crack in her facade, heard the panic in her phone conversation. Outside, I texted Jonah. You were right. Something's definitely wrong. And I think it's bigger than just the trust fund. His response was immediate. Be careful. People who have something to hide usually have more than one secret. Looking back at the house, I saw Tessa watching me from her window. For a moment, our eyes met, and I saw something there, doubt, fear, confusion. Then she pulled the curtains closed, shutting me out completely. Elise's house always smelled like cinnamon and hope. Even now, sitting in her sunny kitchen while my former stepmother made tea, I felt the knots in my shoulders starting to loosen. Her nephew's artwork covered the fridge, bright, messy paintings that reminded me of the ones she used to hang up when I was younger. You look exactly like you did at 10, Elise said, sliding a mug across the counter. Same worried forehead. That obvious, huh? Honey, you wouldn't be here at 7 in the morning if something wasn't wrong. She settled onto the stool beside me. Is it about Marla? I pulled out my phone, showing her the photos I'd taken of the trust fund documents and bank statements. Her expression darkened as she scrolled through them. History repeating itself, she muttered. What do you mean? She set the phone down carefully, like it might explode. Your father never told you why Marla really left, did he? She abandoned us. What else is there to know? There was money missing then too. Nearly $500,000. Elise's hands tightened around her mug. Your father covered it up to protect you girls. He thought if you knew. The kitchen suddenly felt too small. Did you know about this when you were married to Dad?
I found out near the end.
It's partly why we divorced. I couldn't understand how he could let her back into your lives, even just through letters and birthday cards. She reached for my hand. I should have told you sooner, but it wasn't my story to tell. My phone buzzed, another text from Tessa. Mom's crying in her room. Thanks a lot. I don't know what to do, I admitted. If I tell Dad what I suspect, it'll destroy him. If I don't, you'll end up losing everything anyway, Elise finished, including your sister. As if on cue, my phone lit up with a call from Dad. I let it go to voicemail. You know what the worst part is? I said, staring at his smiling contact photo. Part of me wants her to be innocent, for Tessa's sake, for Dad's. Even after everything. That's because you have a good heart, Elise said. But sometimes having a good heart means making hard choices to protect the people you love. A text from Jonah popped up. Found something interesting about Marla's new lawyer. Call me when you can. I need to make a call, I said, standing. But first, those documents you mentioned, from 12 years ago. Do they still exist? Elise's eyes narrowed. Possibly. In your father's home office, there's a false bottom in the bottom right drawer. He thinks I don't know about it. I hugged her tightly, breathing in the familiar scent of cinnamon and safety.
Thank you.
For everything. Be careful, Sloane. Marla's desperate, and desperate people are dangerous. Outside, I called Jonah while walking to my car. His voice was tight with urgency. Her lawyer isn't real, he said without preamble. The firm exists, but the person she claims is representing her doesn't work there. Never has. My hands started shaking. There's more. Elise just told me about money that went missing 12 years ago, right before Mom left. Jesus, Jonah breathed. What are you going to do? I spotted movement in my rearview mirror, a familiar car turning onto the street. I need to get into Dad's office. The proof might be there. Want me to stay on the line? No, but keep your phone close. My voice wavered slightly. Always, he said softly. The car behind me turned when I turned. My heart rate kicked up. I think I'm being followed.
What?
By who? Can't tell, but I've seen this car before, outside my apartment last night. I made another random turn. The car followed. I need to go. Sloane, wait. I ended the call, hands gripping the steering wheel. In my mirror, I could just make out the driver's face. It was Marla. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You should have left it alone. Some secrets are better left buried. I took a deep breath, remembering what Elise said about desperate people. Then I turned my car toward my father's house.
If Marla wanted to follow me, fine.
Let her see exactly what I was capable of. The zoo's interview panel consisted of 3 people, but I could barely focus on any of them. My phone had buzzed twice during the meeting, both texts from Tessa about Dad's missing files. Apparently, Marla had torn apart his office looking for something while I was at Elise's. Your experience with large predators is impressive, the head zookeeper said, drawing my attention back. But I'm curious about how you handle unexpected situations. I thought about Marla following me earlier, about the missing files, about everything spiraling out of control. I've learned that the most dangerous moments are when you think you have everything figured out. They seemed to like that answer. An hour later, I had the job. Standing in the parking lot afterward, I checked my messages. 5 missed calls from Dad, 3 from Tessa, and 1 from an unknown number. But it was Jonah's text that made my stomach drop. Found something about Marla. It's worse than we thought. Call ASAP. Before I could dial, another call came through. Dad. Where are you? His voice was strange, tight. We need to talk. I just finished my interview. What's wrong? Come to the house. Please. He hung up before I could respond. The drive home felt endless. When I pulled up, I noticed Marla's car was gone, but there was a police cruiser in the driveway. My hands went cold. Inside, I found Dad sitting at the kitchen table with 2 officers. Tessa was curled up on the couch, her face tear-stained. The trust fund papers were spread across the table. Miss Harrington, one officer said, standing. We need to ask you some questions about your mother. What happened? Someone accessed your father's accounts this morning, the officer said. Nearly $2 million was transferred offshore. The bank flagged it as suspicious activity. Dad wouldn't meet my eyes. They think you might have helped her. The room tilted sideways. What? The transfers were authorized using your social security number, the second officer explained. And there's evidence of communication between you and your mother planning this for months. That's impossible. I pulled out my phone, showing them the threatening texts. She's been following me, sending me warnings. From your own number, the officer cut in. We checked. The texts you're claiming came from her were sent from a second phone registered in your name. Tessa made a small, hurt sound from the couch. I found Mom crying this morning. She showed me the emails you sent her, threatening to destroy our family if she didn't leave again. Emails I never wrote. I said, but my voice sounded weak even to me. Dad, you know I wouldn't. Do I? He finally looked at me, and the doubt in his eyes felt like a physical blow. You've been acting strange ever since she came back. Asking about the trust, looking through my files. My phone buzzed, Jonah, again. I answered on speaker, desperate for someone to believe me. Sloan, listen, he said urgently. Marla's done this before. 3 other families, different names. She. The call cut off abruptly. When I tried to redial, the number was unavailable. Officers, Dad said quietly. I'd like to press charges. The world stopped. Dad, please. I'm sorry, Sloan. He looked ancient, suddenly broken. But the evidence, your signature on the transfers, the emails, the phone records. Miss Harrington, the officer said, reaching for his handcuffs. Please place your hands behind your back. As they led me out, I caught a glimpse of movement in the upstairs window. Marla, watching with what looked like genuine sadness on her face. But underneath it, something else flickered in her eyes. Something that looked almost like triumph. My phone lit up one last time before they took it. Some daughters never learn when to let go. Say goodbye to everything you love. The message was from my own number. In the back of the police car, I thought about what Elise had said about desperate people being dangerous. She was right. But she'd forgotten something important. Sometimes the most dangerous person isn't the desperate one. It's the one who has nothing left to lose. And thanks to Marla, that's exactly what I'd become. 3 days in county lockup gave me plenty of time to think. The fluorescent lights never went off completely, casting everything in a sickly glow that made sleep impossible. Not that I could sleep anyway. Not with Marla's perfectly orchestrated plan playing on repeat in my head. Elise posted my bail. When she picked me up, her face was drawn with worry. Jonah's been trying to reach you, she said as we drove. He found something about Marla's past, records under different names, similar schemes. The police are looking into it. Too late, I muttered, staring out the window. She's probably long gone with the money by now. Actually, Elise hesitated. She's still at your father's house, acting the concerned mother, telling everyone how worried she is about your mental state. My laugh sounded hollow even to my own ears. Of course she is. My phone had been confiscated as evidence, but Elise handed me her tablet. Jonah sent these files. You need to see them. The documents showed a pattern spanning 15 years, different names, different cities, but always the same story. A broken family, a prodigal mother's return, missing money, and a daughter left holding the blame. In 3 cases, the daughters were still in prison. She's not after the money, I realized, my stomach turning. She's after revenge, Elise finished. But against who? Before I could answer, headlights swept across us. A car pulled alongside at the red light, Tessa in the passenger seat, Marla driving. Our eyes met through the windows. Tessa's face crumpled. She mouthed something that looked like, I'm sorry, before Marla accelerated through the yellow light, leaving us behind. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your sister's starting to ask questions. Shame if she ended up like the others. Take me to Dad's house, I said, my voice steady despite the fear churning in my gut. Sloan, you can't. The restraining order. She's going to hurt Tessa. I showed her the text. I don't care about the consequences anymore. Elise studied me for a long moment, then made a U-turn. There's something else you should know. Your father's been trying to reach you through me. He found something in his office after the police left. Old letters between Marla and his father, from before you were born. My grandfather had died before I was born, leaving everything to Dad. The inheritance that had made our family wealthy. What did they say? I don't know the details, but it changed something for him. He's been asking questions, looking into the past. She gripped the steering wheel tighter. And now Marla's threatening Tessa. Another text came through. Tick-tock. Some secrets stay buried. Others take everyone down with them. We pulled up to my father's house. Lights blazed from every window, silhouettes moving inside. My heart hammered against my ribs as we approached the door. Dad opened it before we could knock. He looked like he'd aged years in 3 days. You shouldn't be here, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Where's Tessa?" "Upstairs with your mother." "Sloan, I found." A scream cut through the house, Tessa's voice, high with panic. I pushed past Dad, taking the stairs two at a time. Behind me, I heard him calling the police. I found them in Dad's office. Marla had Tessa cornered by the window, an old leather-bound journal in her hands. My sister's face was streaked with tears. "Tell her," Tessa pleaded. "Tell her the truth about Grandpa." Marla's composed mask cracked slightly. "I told you to stay quiet." "The truth about what?" I demanded. "About why she really came back," Tessa said. "About what Grandpa did to her before you were born. About why she—" "Enough." Marla's voice shook with something beyond anger, real fear. She moved toward Tessa, journal raised like a weapon. I stepped between them, finally understanding. This wasn't about money or revenge against me. This was about something deeper, darker, a generational secret that had poisoned everything it touched. And now I had to choose: expose the truth and risk destroying what was left of our family, or let Marla's cycle of revenge continue. "Behind me," Tessa whispered. "I found the other letters, Mom. I know everything." The journal fell from Marla's hands, pages scattering across the floor like broken promises. The scattered pages from Marla's journal painted a horrifying picture. Each entry revealed another layer of my grandfather's abuse, his manipulation, the way he'd used his money and power to silence everyone around him, including my mother. "I was 17, Marla whispered, her composure finally cracking. "Your father never knew. His father threatened to destroy everything if I told anyone." Dad stood in the doorway, his face ashen. "The letters I found were my attempts to warn you," Marla said. "But he intercepted them all. When I found out I was pregnant with Sloan, I thought—" She broke off, hands shaking. "I thought I could protect her. But he had other plans. The trust fund, I realized. The one he set up for me before he died. It wasn't a gift. It was insurance." Marla's laugh was bitter. As long as that money existed, tied to his name, his secrets stayed buried. "I couldn't let you inherit that poison." Tessa moved closer to me, gripping my hand. "That's why you came back."
To steal the money.
"To destroy it," Marla corrected. "Along with everything else he built on other people's pain. But I needed someone to blame when it all fell apart. The weight of understanding crashed over me. You set me up to take the fall, just like those other daughters in different cities. They were like you, inheritors of blood money, living off the profits of monsters." Her voice hardened. "I gave them a choice. Help me destroy it all or go down with it. And when they refused, they chose their inheritance over justice." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Dad stepped into the room, looking older than I'd ever seen him. "The police are coming," he said quietly. "Marla, what you've done to our daughter." "What I've done?" She whirled on him. "What your father did destroyed everything. And you never saw it, never questioned where all that money really came from. What he was really doing with his business trips and his investments in young companies run by desperate young women." The journal pages at our feet suddenly felt radioactive. Each one documented not just personal abuse, but a pattern of exploitation spanning decades. My inheritance wasn't just tainted, it was blood money. "I'll tell them everything," I said as the sirens got closer. "About Grandpa, about the money, about all of it." "They won't believe you," Marla said softly. "They never do. That's why I had to do it this way. Make you look unstable, desperate for attention, just like the others." Tessa pulled away from me, horror dawning on her face. "The other daughters, they're still in prison because no one believed them either." The front door burst open downstairs. Heavy footsteps approached. "Last chance, Sloan," Marla said, her voice almost gentle. "Help me finish this, or spend the rest of your life paying for his crimes." Dad moved between us. "Enough, Marla. It's over." "It's been over for a long time," she replied, pulling something from her pocket, a USB drive. "Everything's already done. The money's gone, distributed to his victims. All that's left is deciding who takes the blame." The police reached the top of the stairs. In that moment, looking at my father's devastation, Tessa's tears, and Marla's cold determination, I made my choice. I'll confess, I said as the officers appeared in the doorway. To all of it. Sloan, no. Dad started, but I cut him off. Better me than Tessa growing up without a mother. I met Marla's eyes. That's what this was really about, wasn't it? Making sure history didn't repeat itself. For the first time, I saw real emotion crack through her facade, pain, guilt, and something that might have been gratitude. As the officers moved to handcuff me, I heard Tessa's broken whisper. But who's going to protect you? I didn't have an answer. Some sacrifices don't come with protection plans. They just come with the hope that somehow, the truth will eventually surface, even if you're not around to see it. The interrogation room felt smaller with each passing hour. Detective Morris had been questioning me for 3 hours straight, but I kept my story consistent. I'd stolen the money. I'd framed my mother. I'd done it all, until Jonah walked in. You can't be here, I said, my carefully constructed facade cracking at the sight of him. Actually, he can, Detective Morris said. Mr. Reed has provided us with some very interesting evidence. Jonah set a laptop on the table, his eyes meeting mine with an intensity I'd never seen before. I'm sorry, Sloan, but I can't let you do this. The screen showed a video feed, Marla in another interrogation room, breaking down as she read something. With a start, I recognized the handwriting from the anonymous letters. Elise, I whispered. Your former stepmother kept everything, Jonah said. Every letter your grandfather wrote to Marla. Every threat, every transaction. She's been gathering evidence for years, waiting for the right moment.
The door opened again.
Dad walked in, followed by Elise herself. The other daughters, Elise said, placing a thick folder on the table. I found them all. They're being released as we speak, their cases reopened based on new evidence. My hands started shaking. But Marla is telling the truth now, Dad cut in.
His voice was raw.
All of it. About my father, about what he did, about why she really came back. Detective Morris slid another document across the table. Your mother just signed a full confession. Not about the money, about everything else, including how she manipulated you into taking the blame. I chose to take it, I insisted. Did you? Jonah opened another video file. Or did she spend months setting you up, knowing you'd sacrifice yourself to protect Tessa? The video showed Marla on various dates, making calls, sending texts from a phone registered in my name, creating the trail of evidence that would implicate me. She needed someone to blame, Elise explained gently. Someone the police would believe could have stolen the money. But she also needed someone strong enough to survive taking the fall. Where is she now? My voice sounded distant to my own ears. Making things right, Dad said, starting with returning the money to the victims' families. A knock at the door. Tessa burst in, ignoring the detective's protests. I heard Mom's confession, she said, tears streaming down her face. About everything. About what she did to you. What Grandpa did to her. Why didn't you tell me? Because you deserve to have a mother who wasn't broken, I said softly. I deserve the truth, Tessa countered. We all did. Detective Morris cleared his throat. Miss Harrington, in light of the new evidence, we're dropping all charges against you. However, we'll need your testimony about your grandfather's activities. And Marla will face consequences for her actions, he said. But her cooperation and the circumstances, the DA is willing to be lenient. I looked at my family, Dad's guilt-ridden face, Tessa's tear-stained cheeks, Elise's quiet strength, Jonah's unwavering support. And somewhere in another room, Marla, finally telling the truth after decades of silence. I want to see her, I said. They led me to her room. She looked up as I entered, her mask completely gone. I tried to protect you, she whispered, in the worst possible way. By making me into you? Someone willing to sacrifice everything for revenge. No, she said, surprising me. By making you strong enough to do what I never could. Tell the truth, no matter the cost. I sat across from her, seeing her clearly for the first time, not as the mother who abandoned me, or the manipulator who tried to destroy me, but as someone who'd been broken long before I was born. Then let's tell it together, I said. All of it. No more secrets, no more revenge. She reached across the table, hesitantly taking my hand. Behind the two-way mirror, I knew our family was watching, waiting to see if healing was possible after so much damage. I didn't know if it was, but I knew we had to try. For all the daughters who came before, and all the ones who would come after. 6 months later, I stood at the zoo's lion enclosure, watching the morning feeding. My new uniform still felt stiff, but the name tag reading assistant keeper made it worth it. Behind me, familiar footsteps approached. They're like family, aren't they? Tessa said, joining me at the railing. All protecting each other, even when they fight. I smiled at my sister's insight. At 14, she was starting to see the world with clearer eyes than most adults I knew. Mom's hearing is next week, she continued, her voice steady despite the weight of the words. She wants us both there. Marla had taken a plea deal, agreeing to testify about our grandfather's crimes in exchange for a reduced sentence. The money she'd stolen had been returned to its rightful owners, the families of all the women he'd hurt over the years. Will you come?
Tessa asked.
I watched the lioness nudge her cubs toward their meal, protective, but allowing them to find their own way. Yes. My phone buzzed, a message from Jonah with a photo of his new rescue tiger. He'd been offered a position at our zoo, but we both agreed that long distance worked better for now. Some things needed time to grow naturally. Dad's selling the house, Tessa said suddenly. Says he doesn't want to live with Grandpa's ghost anymore. I nodded. Dad had changed the most through all this, facing his own blindness to his father's crimes. He'd donated most of his inheritance to organizations supporting abuse survivors, keeping only enough to ensure Tessa's education. Elise helped him find a smaller place, I said, close to both of us. And those letters she sent you? The ones that started everything. I touched my pocket, where I kept the last anonymous letter Elise had written. Not a warning this time, but a reminder that sometimes the hardest truths come from those who love us most.
She saw what was coming, I said.
She knew I'd need proof of everything eventually. That's why she kept all those documents about Grandpa. But she let you figure it out yourself, Tessa observed. Even when it hurt. Sometimes that's what love looks like. A commotion drew our attention back to the lions. The smallest cub had wandered too close to the water, and the entire pride moved as one to guide it back to safety. No blame, no punishment. Just protection and guidance. I visited Mom yesterday, I admitted. She's different now. More like I imagined she was before everything happened. Before Grandpa? Before she learned to use pain as a weapon. Tessa leaned against me, her head on my shoulder. Do you think we'll ever be a normal family? Normal's overrated, I said, making her laugh. But maybe we can be something better, honest. My work radio crackled, calling me to the elephant enclosure. As I turned to leave, Tessa caught my arm. The inheritance, she said. The part that was supposed to be yours. Do you regret giving it up? I thought about the blood money that had poisoned 3 generations of our family. About Marla's twisted path to justice. About my own brush with becoming someone I wasn't meant to be. Some legacies aren't worth keeping, I said finally. We get to choose which ones we carry forward. She nodded, understanding more than a 14-year-old should have to. But that was our family now, carrying hard truths together instead of suffering alone with comfortable lies. As I walked to the elephant enclosure, I passed the zoo's newest exhibition, a butterfly sanctuary. Through the glass, I watched the delicate creatures emerge from their chrysalises, transformed but still bearing marks of their past lives in their wing patterns. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from Marla. I'm ready to tell the whole truth. Not for redemption. For healing. I looked back at Tessa, still watching the lions. At the butterflies breaking free. At my reflection in the glass, finally recognizing the person staring back at me. Some stories don't end with perfect justice or complete forgiveness. They end with small steps towards something better, with the understanding that healing isn't a destination but a daily choice. And sometimes that's enough.
I never meant to find that video. Some things are better left buried in dusty boxes, forgotten in attic corners. But on that sweltering summer afternoon, while searching for my old ballet shoes, I stumbled upon the truth that would shatter my 6-year-old world. My name is Lila, and this is the story of how I discovered I was never meant to be enough. The attic was stuffy, dust particles dancing in the rays of sunlight that filtered through the small window. I'd been rummaging through cardboard boxes, determined to find my pink ballet slippers for show and tell tomorrow, when I came across an unmarked VHS tape. Curious, I carried it downstairs to our rarely used family room, where our ancient VCR still sat beneath the TV. The screen flickered to life, and there were my parents, looking younger but unmistakable. Mom's hair was shorter, Dad still had that mustache he'd later shave off. They were sitting on our old green couch, beaming at the camera. "We're so excited to share our wonderful news," Mom was saying, her hand resting on her stomach. "After years of trying, we're finally expecting our son." My father squeezed her shoulder. "The doctors confirmed it yesterday. A boy. Finally, a chance to pass on the Marlowe name. Our family will be complete," Mom added, wiping away happy tears. I sat there, cross-legged on the carpet, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. This had to be when Mom was pregnant with my younger brother, Caleb. But something wasn't adding up. Timestamp on the video showed it was from 14 years ago. Caleb was only 2. That's when it hit me. They'd been trying for a boy before I was born. I was their first attempt, their first disappointment. "Lila? What are you watching?" I jumped at my grandmother Violet's voice. She stood in the doorway, a basket of folded laundry in her arms. When she saw the screen, the basket slipped from her grasp, scattering clean clothes across the floor. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered, rushing to turn off the TV. "You weren't supposed to see that." "They wanted a boy," I said, my voice small. "Before me. They always wanted a boy." Grandma Violet knelt beside me, her arthritis forgotten as she pulled me into her arms. She smelled like lavender and fresh bread, but even her familiar comfort couldn't stop the tears that came. "Your parents," she started, then stopped, choosing her words carefully. "Sometimes adults get fixed ideas about what they want. But that doesn't mean. Is that why they sent me to live with you?" I asked, pulling back to look at her face. "Because I wasn't the boy they wanted?" The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. For the past year, I'd been living with Grandma Violet while my parents got the nursery ready for Caleb. I thought it was because they needed space or because I was special enough to help Grandma with her garden and her baking. Now I understood. They'd been starting over with their do-over baby. "Listen to me," Grandma Violet said firmly, taking my small hands in hers. "You are perfect exactly as you are. Some people are too blind to see the treasure right in front of them." But I barely heard her. In my mind, I was replaying every distant hug, every distracted "that's nice, dear," every time they'd been too busy to attend my school events. It all made sense now. That night, as Grandma tucked me into bed in what had become my room, I asked, "Do I have to go back home when the baby's bigger?" She hesitated, smoothing my hair back from my forehead. "We'll figure it out together, sweet pea. Whatever happens, you'll always have me." I nodded, but inside something had shifted. That little girl who desperately wanted her parents' approval began to fade, replaced by someone harder. Someone who understood that some things had to be earned or taken. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a long game I'd learned to play very, very well. 2 years passed at Grandma Violet's before my parents decided it was time for me to come home. I was 8 now and, according to Mom, old enough to be helpful. Those words should have warned me about what was coming. The house felt different when I walked in. Toys scattered across the floor, cheerful alphabet blocks decorating every surface, and the constant soundtrack of Caleb's babbling filled the air. My room had been converted into a playroom, my things relocated to the smaller guest room at the end of the hall. "We thought Caleb needed the space more," Mom explained, not quite meeting my eyes. "You understand, don't you, sweetie?" I nodded because that's what good girls do. But understanding and accepting are two very different things. My new role became clear within days. While Mom and Dad fawned over every gurgle and step Caleb took, I became his shadow. Watch your brother. Make sure he doesn't put that in his mouth. Why weren't you paying attention when he tried to climb the bookshelf? One particularly hot afternoon, Mom asked me to take Caleb to the park. He was 2 now, full of energy and absolutely fearless. I sat on a bench, watching him toddle around the playground when Sarah from my old class approached. "Lila, where have you been? We missed you at school." For a moment, I forgot my responsibilities, caught up in catching up with my old friend. We talked about our favorite teachers, the new slide in the schoolyard, the upcoming talent show. Felt normal. Felt like being 8 again. Then I heard the scream. Caleb had climbed to the top of the play structure and was teetering on the edge. My heart stopped. I ran, but I wasn't fast enough. He fell, landing with a thud that seemed to echo across the playground. The next few hours were a blur of emergency room lights and my parents' angry voices. Caleb was fine, just a sprained wrist and a few bruises, but you'd think I'd pushed him myself from the way Mom and Dad reacted. "How could you be so irresponsible?" Dad's voice boomed through the hospital corridor. "He could have been killed." "I only looked away for a minute," I whispered, but Mom cut me off. "A minute is all it takes. We trusted you with one thing, Lila. One simple thing." A nurse passing by gave me a sympathetic look, but quickly hurried past. I stood there, shoulders hunched, as my parents continued their tirade. Through the emergency room window, I could see Caleb happily playing with a toy car, his wrist wrapped in a bright blue cast, completely oblivious to the drama unfolding. That night, after everyone was asleep, I crept down to the kitchen for a glass of water. I heard Mom's voice drifting from the living room. "Maybe we made a mistake bringing her back so soon," she was saying softly. "She's clearly not ready for this responsibility." "What choice do we have?" Dad replied. "We can't afford a nanny, and your mother's too old to handle Caleb full-time. I just thought, I hoped she'd be more mature by now. More like the son we wanted?" I whispered to myself, completing her unspoken thought. I didn't wait to hear the rest. Climbing back upstairs, I paused at Caleb's room. He was sleeping peacefully, his injured arm cradled against his chest. It wasn't his fault, really. He was just a toddler, living the life our parents had always wanted to give their child. Their real child. In my new, smaller room, I pulled out the phone Grandma Violet had given me for emergencies. My fingers hovered over her number, but I stopped myself. I couldn't run back to her every time things got hard. Besides, I was starting to understand something important. If I wanted my parents' approval, I'd have to earn it. And if I couldn't earn it, well, maybe I could make them regret taking me for granted. I looked at my reflection in the dark window, seeing something harder in my eyes than before. "Game on," I whispered to my reflection. "Let's show them what the disappointing daughter can do." Little did I know that night would mark the beginning of a plan that would take years to unfold but would change everything. By 13, I'd learned to move silently through our house, becoming a ghost in my own home. That's how I happened to overhear the conversation that would change everything. Again, I was heading to the kitchen for a late-night snack when I heard voices from Dad's study. The door was cracked open, letting a thin slice of light spill into the darkened hallway. "The market's been good to us," Dad was saying. "If we start investing now, we'll have enough saved for Caleb's college fund by the time he's ready." I froze mid-step. College fund? They'd never mentioned anything about college funds to me. "What about that private high school you mentioned?" Mom asked. "The one with the excellent sports program? Riverdale Prep? It's expensive, but with some portfolio adjustments, we could manage it. Caleb's showing real promise in baseball. This could be his ticket to a scholarship." I pressed my back against the wall, my heart hammering. 7-year-old Caleb had just started Little League last month, and they were already planning his entire future. What about Lila's college? Mom's voice was quieter now. She'll be starting in a few years. There was a pause, followed by the sound of ice cubes clinking in a glass. She's smart. She'll get scholarships if she applies herself. Besides, she can always start at community college if needed. I suppose you're right. Mom sighed. And she's always been so independent. I bit my lip until I tasted blood, fighting back tears. Independent. Right. Because they'd never given me any other choice. The next morning, I sat at the breakfast table, watching Mom cut Caleb's pancakes into perfect little squares while my cold cereal turned to mush. Dad was helping him practice his multiplication tables between bites. 7 times 8? Dad asked. 56. Caleb beamed as Dad ruffled his hair. That's my boy. Keep this up and you'll be top of your class. I cleared my throat. I got an A+ on my biology test yesterday. Mr. Peterson said it was the highest score he's seen in years. That's nice, dear, Mom said absently, wiping syrup from Caleb's chin. Oh, don't forget you're watching Caleb after school today. Dad and I have that meeting with his baseball coach. Something snapped inside me. Actually, I can't. I have study group for the advanced placement exam. Mom finally looked at me, frowning. Since when? Since last month. I told you 3 times. I hadn't, but they never listened anyway. If I pass, I'll be able to take college-level courses next year. Well, you'll have to reschedule, Dad said, not looking up from Caleb's homework. This meeting is important for your brother's future. I stood up so quickly my chair scraped against the floor. What about my future? The silence that followed was deafening. Even Caleb stopped eating, looking between us with wide eyes. Lila, Mom started, using her warning tone. We've talked about your attitude. No, we haven't talked about anything. My voice cracked. You plan Caleb's entire future while I'm supposed to just… What? Figure everything out on my own? Dad set down his coffee cup with deliberate calm. You're being dramatic. We've always supported your education. Really? I laughed, but it sounded more like a sob. Then why were you talking about community college for me last night while planning private school for him? Their faces paled. Mom's hand flew to her throat, a nervous tell I'd seen 1,000 times. You were eavesdropping? Dad's voice had that dangerous edge to it. I was existing in my own house, I shot back. But don't worry, I got the message loud and clear. Caleb's the investment and I'm the afterthought. I grabbed my backpack and headed for the door, ignoring their calls to come back. As I walked to school, I made a decision. They wanted independent? Fine. I'd show them independent. I'd excel so brilliantly they'd have to notice, have to acknowledge me. But more than that, I'd make sure they'd regret every single time they chose him over me. Every single time. That afternoon, I skipped watching Caleb to attend my non-existent study group. Instead, I sat in the library, researching scholarships and planning my escape. Let them deal with their golden child themselves for once. It was time to start playing the long game. The acceptance letter from Stanford arrived on the same day as Caleb's first home run. Guess which one made the family photo album? I stood in the kitchen, clutching the heavy cream envelope while my parents fawned over Caleb's dirt-stained baseball uniform. He was 12 now, and I was 17, both of us excelling in our own ways. The difference was, only one of us got standing ovations. Full academic scholarship, I announced, my voice steady despite my trembling hands. They're even covering room and board. Mom glanced up from where she was scrubbing grass stains from Caleb's pants. That's wonderful, honey. Did you hear that, Richard? Lila got into college. Stanford, I corrected. I got into Stanford. Dad was polishing Caleb's trophy. Community college would have been more practical. California's expensive, even with a scholarship. But I won't need your money, I said, letting the words hang in the air like a challenge. I did this on my own. Finally, they both looked at me. Really looked at me, maybe for the first time in years. I saw something flicker across Mom's face, pride? Concern? But before she could speak, Caleb bounded into the kitchen. Coach says I might make varsity next year. As a freshman. Just like that, the moment shattered. They were back to celebrating Caleb, while my acceptance letter lay forgotten on the counter next to yesterday's grocery receipts. Later that night, I overheard them in the study again. Old habits die hard. Stanford, Mom was saying. That's across the country. Who's going to help with Caleb's training schedule? You know how busy we are with his games. She's always been selfish like this, Dad replied. Making decisions without considering the family. I pressed my forehead against the cool wall, letting their words wash over me. Selfish. Right. 'Cause wanting an education was selfish. Because wanting to be seen was selfish. The next morning, I found an envelope on my bed. Inside was a letter from my parents' bank, showing they'd emptied my college savings account, all $5,000 of it. We had to make some adjustments, Dad explained when I confronted him. Caleb's private coaching isn't cheap, and with the travel team expenses. That was my money, I said, my voice hollow. From summer jobs, from Grandma Violet's birthday checks. It was in our name, he corrected. And as your parents, we have to make decisions for the whole family. I looked at the family photos lining his office walls. Caleb's baseball portraits. Caleb's little league teams. Caleb's trophies. There wasn't a single photo of me after age 6. When, I asked quietly, did I stop being part of this family? He sighed that patronizing sigh I'd grown to hate. Don't be dramatic, Lila. You're going to Stanford, isn't that enough? Yeah, I replied, a cold clarity settling over me. It is enough. It's exactly enough to show me where I stand. That evening, I called Grandma Violet. I told her everything, the scholarship, the emptied account, the years of being invisible except when they needed a convenient babysitter. I always knew you'd fly, little bird, she said softly. Just remember, sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting better. I looked at my acceptance letter again, running my fingers over the embossed letterhead. Stanford. 3,000 miles away from here. From them. I'm done trying to earn their love, I told her. From now on, I'm playing a different game. What game is that? She asked. I smiled, thinking of all the times they dismissed me, underestimated me, forgotten me. The long game, Grandma. The one where they realize exactly what they threw away. After hanging up, I started packing not just clothes and books, but evidence. Bank statements. Old videos. Letters. Someday they'd need something from me. And when that day came, I'd be ready. 'Cause the thing about being invisible? Nobody sees you coming. Stanford was supposed to be my escape, but freedom comes with a price tag I wasn't prepared for. By my second semester, I was juggling 3 part-time jobs with a full course load, running on coffee and determination. My grades started slipping first. Not dramatically, I was still maintaining a 3.5 GPA, but for someone who'd never seen anything below an A, it felt like failure. The irony wasn't lost on me that while I was serving coffee at 6 a.m. to make rent, my parents were probably writing another check for Caleb's private batting coach. Then came the phone call that changed everything. Your grandmother had a fall, Mom said, her voice oddly distant. She's okay, but she'll need surgery. We thought you should know. My heart stopped. I'm coming home. That's not necessary, she replied quickly. Focus on your studies. We've got everything handled here. I gripped my phone tighter. She's my grandmother. I'm coming. The flight home maxed out my emergency credit card, but I didn't care. When I walked into Grandma Violet's hospital room, the sight of her looking small and fragile in the stark white bed nearly broke me. Little bird, she smiled weakly. You shouldn't have come all this way. Of course I came. I took her hand, careful of the 4 lines. Why didn't you call me directly? She glanced away. I didn't want to worry you. Your mother said you were struggling with your classes. I froze. What? She mentioned your grades were suffering, that you might lose your scholarship. The room suddenly felt too small. My parents hadn't contacted me once since I'd left for college, but they'd been talking to Grandma Violet about my supposed failures. My grades are fine, I said firmly. And even if they weren't, it would be because I'm working 3 jobs to survive since they emptied my savings account. Violet's face darkened. They did what? Before I could respond, my parents walked in. Mom was carrying fresh flowers. Dad had a newspaper tucked under his arm. They both stopped short when they saw me. Lila, Mom said, recovering first. We told you not to come. Funny how you've suddenly got opinions about my choices. I stood up slowly. Want to tell me why you're spreading lies about my grades? Dad stepped forward. We're concerned about your priorities. Working all these jobs instead of focusing on your studies. My priorities? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's rich coming from the people who stole my savings to pay for their golden child's batting lessons. Lower your voice, Mom hissed. This isn't the place. They took your savings? Grandma Violet's quiet question cut through the tension like a knife. The money I've been sending you, she continued, her voice growing stronger. For your education. What happened to that? The silence in the room was deafening. My parents wouldn't meet her eyes. What money? I asked slowly. I've been sending them $500 every month since you started college, Violet said. They said you needed help with expenses. The room tilted sideways. $500. Every month. For almost 2 years. That was $12,000, money that had never reached me. You've been... I couldn't even finish the sentence. My hands were shaking so hard I had to grip the bed rail. All those nights I went hungry, all those times I nearly dropped out because I couldn't afford books. We needed it for Caleb's college fund, Mom whispered. We thought, since you had the scholarship. Get out. Grandma Violet's voice was steel. Both of you, get out of my room right now. They left without arguing, but I barely noticed. I was too busy calculating all the hours I'd worked, all the meals I'd skipped, all the nights I'd cried myself to sleep wondering if I'd make it through another semester. Little bird, Grandma Violet reached for my hand. We're going to fix this. Together. I looked at her, this woman who'd always been my only real parent, and made a decision. No, Grandma. I'm going to fix this. And they're going to regret every single penny they took. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about justice. And I was just getting started. I met Owen at a coffee shop 5 years after graduation. By then, I'd built a life they couldn't touch, senior financial analyst at a tech firm, my own apartment in San Francisco, and enough savings to help Grandma Violet live comfortably. I thought I was done with the past. I was wrong. Owen was different from anyone I'd ever known. He laughed easily, loved deeply, and saw straight through my carefully constructed walls. On our 3rd date, he asked about my family. It's complicated, I said, stirring my coffee. Try me. So I told him everything. About the video, about Caleb, about the stolen money. He listened without judgment, then reached across the table and took my hand. They didn't deserve you, he said simply. We married 6 months later, with only Grandma Violet present. I was happy, truly happy, for the first time in my life. Then came the email that shattered everything. Your brother's been arrested, Mom wrote. We need your help. I deleted it without responding, but more messages followed. Caleb had been caught embezzling from his college baseball team's fundraising account. They needed $50,000 for legal fees. Tell them no, Owen said when I showed him the emails. You don't owe them anything. He was right. I knew he was right. But that night I lay awake, remembering 6-year-old Caleb's gap-toothed smile, his little hand in mine as we walked to the park. Had I become just like them, choosing who deserved love and who didn't? The decision was made for me when I discovered I was pregnant. Looking at that positive test, I made a promise to my unborn child that the cycle of favoritism would end with me. I wrote back to my parents, "I'm not your backup plan anymore." Finn was born on a rainy Tuesday in March. He was perfect, 10 tiny fingers, 10 tiny toes, and eyes that seemed to hold all the wisdom in the world. As I held him, I understood with crushing clarity what my parents had failed to give me. "He's beautiful," Grandma Violet whispered, touching his cheek. She'd moved to San Francisco after her surgery, becoming the grandmother to Finn that she'd always been to me. Then came the letter. Not an email this time, actual paper, heavy stock, formal letterhead. "Dear Mrs. Carter," it began. "We represent Richard and Elaine Marlowe in the matter of their petition for bankruptcy protection. They'd mortgaged their house to pay for Caleb's legal defense. Now they were losing everything." The letter ended with a request for financial assistance, citing family obligations. I stood in my kitchen, reading and rereading those words while Finn napped upstairs. Family obligations. The same obligations they'd never felt toward me. Owen found me there hours later, the letter crumpled in my fist. "They want money," I said flatly. "What are you going to do?" I looked at the family photos on our wall, real ones, full of love and laughter. Finn's first smile. Our wedding day. Grandma Violet teaching me to bake cookies. "I don't know," I whispered. "If I help them, I'm enabling more abuse. If I don't." "If you don't, you're protecting yourself and your son," Owen finished. But it wasn't that simple. Because now I had Finn, I understood something terrible. Even the worst parents leave marks on your heart that never quite heal. That night, I wrote 2 checks. One to my parents' mortgage company and one to a trust fund for Finn. Same amount. Different futures. "This isn't forgiveness," I wrote in the accompanying letter. "This is goodbye." I sealed the envelope, knowing this wasn't the end. They'd want more, they always wanted more. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if I was strong enough to keep saying no. 'Cause sometimes the hardest part of revenge isn't executing it, it's living with the person you become in the process. I never planned to attend that Thanksgiving dinner. But when Grandma Violet insisted it might be our last chance to all be together, given her recent health issues, I couldn't say no. That's how I found myself back in my childhood home, 5-year-old Finn clutching my hand as we walked through the front door. The house smelled like turkey and tension. Mom hugged Finn enthusiastically while barely glancing at me. Dad and Caleb were watching football, both pretending I wasn't there. Only Grandma Violet's presence in the kitchen kept me from turning around and leaving. "Your old room's exactly how you left it," Mom said, but we all knew that was a lie. It had been Caleb's game room for years. Dinner started quietly enough. Finn, innocent to the undercurrents, chatted happily about kindergarten and his new puppy. Then came the moment that changed everything. "Daddy says Grandma and Grandpa only call Mommy when they need money," Finn announced, reaching for another roll. Like a piggy bank. The silence that followed was deafening. Owen nearly choked on his wine. "What an imagination children have," Mom laughed nervously, but her hands were shaking as she cut her turkey. "Is he wrong?" I asked quietly, placing my fork down. "How many times have you called this year alone? The mortgage, Caleb's legal fees, the car payment." "This isn't the time," Dad warned, but I was done being silenced. "When is the time? When you need another check? When Caleb gets into more trouble?" I turned to my brother. "Did they ever tell you where your college fund really came from?" Caleb looked up from his plate, confusion crossing his face. "What are you talking about?" "They stole my savings. Then they took Grandma's money meant for my education. All for you." My voice was steady, even as my hands trembled. "I worked 3 jobs in college while you got private coaching and new equipment. I nearly dropped out while they were building your future with my present." "That's enough." Dad slammed his hand on the table, making the dishes rattle. We did what was best for this family. What family? I stood up slowly. The only family member who ever cared about me is sitting right there. I nodded toward Grandma Violet, who was watching with tears in her eyes. Everything we did, Mom started, we did because you wanted a son, I finished. I know. I saw the video when I was 6, remember? Finally, our family will be complete. Well, congratulations. You got your perfect son. How's that working out for you? Caleb pushed back from the table. This isn't my fault. No, I agreed. It's theirs. But you were happy to benefit from it, weren't you? Lila, Owen said softly, placing a hand on my arm. Finn had gone very quiet, his eyes wide. I'm done, I announced, reaching for my purse. I pulled out an envelope and placed it on the table. Inside is documentation of every penny you've taken from me over the years, including Grandma's stolen money, plus records of all the times you've asked for help since. I've sent copies to my lawyer. Are you threatening us? Dad's face had gone red. No. I'm setting you free. You don't have to pretend to care about me anymore. No more awkward holidays, no more reluctant phone calls when you need money. I picked up Finn, who buried his face in my neck. But understand this, you will never treat my son the way you treated me. He will never know what it feels like to be the unwanted child. Lila, please, Mom was crying now. We're still your parents. No, I said softly. You're just the people who taught me exactly what kind of mother I never want to be. I turned to leave, then stopped. Oh, and one more thing. I've set up a trust fund for Finn. One that you can never touch. Because that's what real parents do. They protect their children's future instead of stealing it. As we walked out, Grandma Violet joined us, her head held high. Behind us, I could hear Mom's sobbing and Dad's angry voice, but for the first time in my life, their emotions weren't my responsibility. In the car, Finn looked at me with serious eyes. Are we still going to have Thanksgiving next year? Yes, baby, I smiled, meeting Owen's supportive gaze in the rearview mirror. But from now on, we're only celebrating with people who know how to love. 6 months after that Thanksgiving dinner, I received a thick envelope from my parents' lawyer. Inside was a deed to their house, signed over to me. They declared bankruptcy and moved to a smaller place closer to Caleb's new job at a local sporting goods store. The golden child had fallen, and they'd fallen with him. I sat in Grandma Violet's garden, watching Finn help her plant spring bulbs, the envelope heavy in my lap. You know, Violet said, brushing dirt from her hands, your mother was just like them, her parents, I mean. I looked up sharply. What? Oh, yes. They favored her brother, too. That's why I tried so hard with you. She settled into the garden chair beside me. I watched history repeating itself, and I couldn't stop it. Just like I couldn't stop your mother from becoming exactly what she hated. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. All these years, I'd thought I was alone in this story. But here was Grandma Violet, carrying the same scars, fighting the same battles. Why didn't you tell me sooner? She smiled sadly. Would it have helped? Some lessons we have to learn on our own. The important thing is what we do with them. Finn ran over, proudly showing us a worm he'd found. His eyes were bright with discovery, his hands dirty from honest work. In that moment, I saw what real inheritance looked like, not money or property, but the capacity to love freely, to find joy in simple things. Later that evening, Owen found me in our home office, staring at old family photos. What are you thinking? He asked, massaging my shoulders. I'm thinking about cycles, I said. About how easy it is to become what hurt us. But you didn't, he reminded me. You broke the cycle. The next day, I received an unexpected visit from Caleb. He looked older, tired, less like the golden child and more like someone learning hard truths. I didn't know, he said simply, standing awkwardly in my living room. About the money, about what they did to you. I should have known. You were a kid, I replied. We both were. I want to pay you back, he continued. It'll take time, but— Keep it, I interrupted. Use it to be better than they taught us to be. He left with tears in his eyes and a promise to be a better uncle to Finn. I wasn't sure if I believed him, but I was surprised to find that it didn't matter anymore. My happiness didn't depend on their redemption. That night I wrote 2 letters. The first was to my parents, returning the deed to their house. Keep it, I wrote. Consider it payment for teaching me exactly what kind of parent I never want to be. The second letter was to Finn, to be opened on his 18th birthday. In it, I explained everything: the video, the stolen money, the years of neglect. Not to burden him with our family's darkness, but to show him how love can light the way out. The greatest revenge, I wrote, isn't in making others suffer, but in refusing to let their choices define who you become. As I sealed the envelope, I heard Finn's laughter floating up from downstairs, where he was baking cookies with Grandma Violet. Owen's warm chuckle joined in, and suddenly I understood something profound. Revenge had never been about hurting them. It had been about healing myself. I placed both letters in my desk drawer and went downstairs to join my family, my real family, built on choice and love rather than obligation and blood. Kitchen was warm and fragrant with vanilla, and Finn's face lit up when he saw me. "Mommy!" "We made cookies. They're a little messy," Owen apologized, flour dusting his hair. "They're perfect," I said, and meant it. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't in getting even, but in getting free. And freedom, I've learned, tastes a lot like slightly burnt cookies made with loving hands and joyful hearts.
I never thought my family would fall apart over a pot roast dinner. But that's exactly what happened on a Tuesday evening in October, when my mother decided to detonate our lives with what she called her exciting news. My name is Harper, and up until that night, I'd managed to keep our family's chaos somewhat contained. Being 17 meant I was old enough to see the cracks forming, but young enough that everyone still thought I needed protecting. They had it backwards. I was the protector, especially when it came to my 14-year-old brother Finn. "I've been doing some thinking," Mom announced, setting down her fork with the kind of deliberate care that made my stomach clench. "I'm quitting my job at the bank." Dad's fork clattered against his plate. "You're what?" "I found an amazing investment opportunity," she continued, her eyes bright with that familiar gleam that always meant trouble. "My friend Sarah introduced me to this group that's developing luxury tiny homes in Costa Rica. The returns are incredible. We could triple our money in 6 months." I watched Dad's face transform from confusion to disbelief to something darker. "Marlene, tell me you haven't already done something stupid." "Grant, please," Mom said, waving her hand dismissively. "I know what I'm doing. I've done all the research." Finn shifted uncomfortably beside me, pushing his carrots around his plate. I reached under the table and squeezed his knee, our silent signal that everything would be okay, even though my own heart was racing. "Research?" Dad's voice had that dangerous quiet I'd learned to dread. "Like the research you did on that alpaca farm scheme last year? Or the mobile meditation bus the year before that?" "Those were different," Mom insisted. "This is legitimate. They have a website and everything." "A website?" Dad pushed his chair back from the table. "Jesus Christ, Marlene. How much?" The silence that followed was deafening. Mom's fingers twisted her napkin into a tight spiral. "I haven't invested anything yet, but..." "But what?" "I took out a loan against my 401k. The pot roast turned to ash in my mouth. Dad's face went from red to white so fast I thought he might pass out. "You did what?" "It's only 30,000, Mom said quickly. "And once the returns start coming in..." "Returns?" Dad's laugh was hollow. "The only return you're going to get is another bankruptcy filing. Or did you forget about 2019? I hadn't forgotten. How could I? I'd spent that entire summer working double shifts at the ice cream shop to help pay for Finn's school supplies. Mom had the grace to look ashamed, but only for a moment. "This time is different," she insisted. "I can feel it. We could finally have the life we deserve, Grant. No more living paycheck to paycheck. We could travel, get a bigger house." "The life we deserve?" Dad stood up so suddenly his chair toppled backward. "We have a good life, Marlene. A stable life. Or we did, Until you decided to gamble away our retirement fund on another get-rich-quick scheme. It's not gambling. Mom's voice rose. Why do you always have to be so negative? Why can't you just support me for once? I caught movement from the corner of my eye. Finn was crying silently, tears dropping onto his half-eaten dinner. Something inside me snapped. Stop it. I slammed my hands on the table, making everyone jump. Just stop. Look what you're doing to him. Both my parents fell silent, looking at Finn as if they'd forgotten he was there. Mom reached for him, but he flinched away, pushing back from the table and running upstairs. The sound of his door slamming echoed through the house. I hope you're both proud of yourselves, I said, standing up. I'm going to check on him. As I headed upstairs, I heard Dad say quietly, if you go through with this, Marlene, we're done. I mean it this time. Mom's response was lost as I reached Finn's room, but I knew in my gut that this wasn't just another family argument. This was the beginning of the end, and somehow, I was going to have to figure out how to keep us all from drowning in the wreckage. The next morning, I woke to the sound of hushed arguing downstairs. 3 weeks had passed since Mom's announcement, and the tension in our house had become a living, breathing thing. I lay in bed, listening to their voices rise and fall like waves against rocks, until I heard the front door slam. I found Dad in the kitchen, gripping the counter so hard his knuckles were white. Where's Mom? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Meeting with her investment group, he said, spitting out the words like they were poison. Says she needs to wire them the first installment today. My stomach dropped. But I thought you told her. What I think doesn't matter anymore. He grabbed his car keys. I'm heading to the shop early. Make sure Finn eats something before school. I watched him leave, then started making Finn's favorite breakfast, chocolate chip pancakes. As I mixed the batter, I noticed Mom's purse on the counter. She must have forgotten it in her rush to leave. A piece of paper was sticking out, and something about the official-looking letterhead caught my eye. I shouldn't have looked, but after everything that had happened, I couldn't help myself. The letter was from Riverside Bank, dated 5 years ago. As I read, my hands started shaking. Regret to inform you that due to the unauthorized transactions and misappropriation of client funds, your employment with Riverside Bank is hereby terminated, effective immediately. The pancake batter forgotten, I read the letter 3 times. Mom had told us she'd quit her job at Riverside to take a better position at her current bank. Another lie. Is that Mom's stuff? I jumped, shoving the letter back into the purse. Finn stood in the doorway, already dressed for school but looking like he hadn't slept. Just making sure she didn't forget her phone, I lied, hating how easily it came. Want some pancakes? Later that day, I couldn't focus in class. The letter kept playing in my mind, along with all the other opportunities Mom had pursued over the years. The alpaca farm. The meditation bus. Each time, she'd convinced herself and tried to convince us that this was the one that would change everything. My phone buzzed with a text from Dad. Check the mail when you get home. Looking for an important letter from the bank. When I got home, I found Mom sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers. She looked up with that manic excitement I'd grown to dread. Harper, perfect timing. Come look at these projections. The development team just sent over the latest numbers, and they're even better than we thought. I stood in the doorway, the mail clutched in my hands. Among the envelopes was a bank statement addressed to Dad. The seal was already broken. Did you open Dad's mail? Mom's smile faltered for just a second. I needed to check something. Besides, we're family. There shouldn't be secrets between us. Like how you were fired from Riverside Bank. The words left my mouth before I could stop them. Mom's face went completely still, then twisted into something I'd never seen before. You went through my purse? Her voice was deadly quiet. You went through Dad's mail, I shot back. Why did you lie about Riverside? That was different. I was protecting this family. She stood up, gathering her papers. You wouldn't understand. You're just like your father, so afraid of taking risks, of reaching for something better. Better than what? I demanded. We were fine before you started chasing these crazy schemes. Fine. She laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Is that what you want for your life, Harper? To be just fine? To live paycheck to paycheck like your father, never dreaming of anything more. Before I could respond, we heard the front door open. Dad called out, Harper? Did you check the mail? Mom and I stared at each other. In that moment, I saw something in her eyes that scared me, not anger or defiance, but a kind of desperate determination. She held out her hand for the mail. I took a step back, clutching the envelopes to my chest. No more lies, I whispered. Dad appeared in the doorway, taking in the scene before him. The scattered papers. Mom's outstretched hand. The look on my face. What's going on? He asked quietly. And just like that, another crack appeared in our family's foundation, and I knew we were one step closer to everything falling apart. I never expected to find out about my college fund while doing laundry. But there it was, buried in a pile of Mom's discarded jeans, a crumpled letter from my university's financial aid office, dated 3 days ago, stating my tuition payment had bounced. My hands trembled as I read the words again. The college fund Dad and I had carefully built over the years, the one Mom had promised she wouldn't touch, was gone. I stormed upstairs to find Mom hunched over her laptop, frantically typing. What did you do? She barely glanced up. Not now, Harper. I'm in the middle of something important. More important than my future? I slammed the letter down on her keyboard. The money's gone, isn't it? Mom's fingers stopped moving. For a moment, she looked almost guilty. Then her face hardened. It's not gone, it's invested. The returns will be more than enough to cover your tuition and then some. You mean like the returns from your luxury tiny homes? How's that working out? There have been some delays, she admitted. But Sarah says. Sarah, I laughed, but it came out more like a sob. The same Sarah who convinced you to invest in that pyramid scheme last year? This is different. Mom stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. I'm trying to give us a better life. Why can't anyone in this family understand that? Because your better life keeps making our actual life worse. I was shouting now, not caring if the neighbors heard. Did you even think about asking me before stealing my college fund? I didn't steal anything, she hissed. I'm your mother. Everything I do is for this family. The front door opened downstairs. Dad's heavy footsteps echoed through the house. Perfect timing, I said, grabbing the letter. Let's see what Dad thinks about your latest investment strategy. Mom's face went pale. Harper, wait. But I was already halfway down the stairs. Dad stood in the entryway, still in his work clothes, grease stains on his hands. One look at my face and he knew something was wrong. What happened? I handed him the letter. Watched as he read it once, twice, his expression darkening with each line. Mom appeared at the top of the stairs, wringing her hands. Grant, I can explain. Explain what? His voice was deadly quiet. How you stole our daughter's future. Or how you lied to my face when I asked if you'd touched any other accounts. I didn't lie. Mom's voice cracked. The opportunity was too good to pass up. Once the returns come in, there are no returns. Dad roared, making us both jump. There never were. It's all been a scam, Marlene. I called the bank today. They've never heard of this development company. The website's fake. Everything's fake. Mom swayed slightly, grabbing the banister for support. No, that's not. Sarah wouldn't. Sarah's gone, Dad said flatly. Packed up and left town last week. Along with everyone else involved in this scheme. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched Mom's face crumple as reality finally hit her. But instead of remorse, I saw something else take over. Desperation. We can fix this, she said quickly. I still have access to our emergency fund. What emergency fund? Dad's laugh was hollow. The one you emptied last month? I felt the floor drop out from under me. What? Dad turned to me, his eyes full of pain. I'm sorry, Harper. I tried to protect you from this, but... He pulled out his phone, showing me their empty bank statement. Your mother's been lying to all of us for a long time. Grant, please. Mom started down the stairs. We can work this out. No, Dad said quietly. We can't. Not anymore. He turned to me. Pack a bag for you and Finn. You're both coming to stay with me at the motel. You can't take my children. Mom's voice rose hysterically. Watch me, Dad said. Harper, go get your brother. Now. As I ran upstairs, I heard Mom crying, begging Dad to reconsider. But something had broken, finally, irreparably, and we all knew it. Our family wasn't just cracking anymore. It was shattering into pieces too small to ever put back together. The motel lasted exactly 2 weeks before Dad announced he'd found an apartment across town. I watched him pack his few belongings, knowing what was coming next. Harper about the living arrangements. He couldn't meet my eyes. The apartment's small, 1 bedroom, and with my work schedule. I forced a smile. We'll be fine here with Mom. Right, Finn? Finn, curled up in the motel's threadbare armchair, just nodded. We both knew it wasn't true. But what choice did we have? That was 3 months ago. Now I stood behind the counter at Joe's Coffee, trying to calculate if my tips would cover both the electric bill and Finn's art supplies. Mom hadn't been home in 2 days. Something about a promising lead on a new investment opportunity. Order up for table 6. Miguel, our cook, called out. I grabbed the plates, nearly dropping them when I saw Mom sitting at the table, talking animatedly to a man in an expensive suit. Just need a small loan to get started, I heard her say as I approached. The returns would be astronomical. The plates clattered against the table harder than necessary. Mom jumped, finally noticing me. Harper, I didn't know you were working today. Her smile was too bright, too desperate. This is Mr. Chen. He's interested in a fantastic business opportunity I found. I looked at the man, saw the predatory gleam in his eyes. Mom, can I talk to you? Now, in the break room, I rounded on her. Are you serious? Another scheme. It's not a scheme. She pulled out a glossy brochure. It's a revolutionary cryptocurrency platform. Stop. My voice shook. Just stop. We don't have anything left for you to invest. Actually, she wouldn't meet my eyes. I was hoping to borrow your savings. Just temporarily. The returns would more than make up for my savings. I stepped back. The money I've been earning to keep our lights on and food in the fridge? While you're out chasing get-rich-quick dreams. Don't talk to me like that. I'm still your mother. Are you? The words escaped before I could stop them. Because mothers don't steal their children's college funds. They don't disappear for days without explanation. They don't. The slap caught me off guard. Mom looked as shocked as I felt, her hand still raised. Harper, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean. I touched my stinging cheek. I have to get back to work. That night, I found my savings box empty. The money I'd hidden under my mattress, gone. Even the jar of tips I'd kept in the kitchen was cleaned out. I found Mom in her room, frantically shoving clothes into a suitcase. Where is it? Mr. Chen's waiting, she said, not looking at me. Once this deal goes through, I'll pay you back double. Triple. Mom, please. My voice cracked. That money was for Finn's medication. 4 groceries. 4. I'm doing this for us. She whirled around, eyes wild. Why can't you understand? This is our chance to fix everything. There's nothing left to fix. I pulled out my phone. I'm calling Dad. She moved faster than I expected, snatching the phone and throwing it against the wall. You ungrateful little, she caught herself, breathing hard. I'm leaving. When I come back, you'll see. You'll all see. I watched her drag her suitcase down the stairs, listened to the front door slam. Through the window, I saw her get into a black car with Mr. Chen. My phone lay shattered on the floor, but Finn's old Polaroid camera caught my eye. I'd been playing with it lately, finding unexpected peace and capturing moments of beauty in our chaos. Now I picked it up, hands steady despite everything. I took one photo of the empty savings box, another of Mom's ransacked room, a third of the broken phone. Evidence, I told myself, though I wasn't sure for what. Finn appeared in the doorway, eyes wide with understanding. She's gone, isn't she? I nodded, unable to speak. What are we going to do? I looked at the photos spreading across the bed, proof of our mother's final betrayal. Something shifted inside me, a determination hardening into resolve. We're going to survive, I said, reaching for my backup phone, the one Mom didn't know about. But first, I need to make a call. It was time to stop protecting Mom from the consequences of her actions. Time to protect ourselves instead. We lasted 3 days in the house after Mom left. On the 4th morning, I woke to find an eviction notice taped to our front door. Turns out Mom hadn't paid the rent in months. Pack what you can carry, I told Finn, trying to keep my voice steady. Just the essentials. He nodded, clutching his sketchbook to his chest. What about Mom's stuff? I looked at the mess she'd left behind, scattered investment brochures, empty wine bottles, a trail of broken promises. Leave it. The train station was quiet this early. I counted our remaining money, barely enough for 2 tickets to Dad's city. As we waited on the platform, I scrolled through Mom's recent texts. Sorry about everything. This deal is different though. Just need 2 weeks. Harper, please answer. I can explain. You're just like your father. No vision, no faith. The last message came an hour ago. I know you took pictures. Delete them or I'll make things very difficult for you both. I switched off the phone, my hands shaking. Finn leaned against me, half asleep, while I watched the sun rise over the tracks. That's when I noticed the leather-bound journal wedged between the bench slats. I recognized it immediately, Mom's private diary. She must have dropped it during one of her late-night escapes. I shouldn't have opened it, but after everything she'd done, I felt entitled to some answers. The early entries were normal enough. Daily frustrations, dreams of a better life. Then I found the entry from 5 years ago. They don't understand. The money was just sitting there in those accounts, doing nothing. I could have tripled it, made everything better for us. But Grant only sees risk, never opportunity. And now he's poisoning Harper against me too. Sometimes I think they're all conspiring to keep me small, to keep me trapped in this mediocre life. The train arrived with a screech of brakes. As we found our seats, I kept reading, each page revealing more of Mom's descent into delusion. The latest entry was dated just last week. Harper thinks she's so clever with her photographs, gathering evidence like her father would. She doesn't realize I'm protecting her from her own limited thinking. When this cryptocurrency deal pays off, she'll thank me. They'll all thank me. Is that Mom's? Finn asked, startling me. I closed the journal. Yeah. Does it explain why she left? No, I lied, tucking the journal into my bag. Some things don't have explanations, Finn. My phone buzzed, an unknown number. I answered without thinking. Harper. Mom's voice was frantic. Where are you? The house is empty. We got evicted, I said flatly. Remember rent? That thing you were supposed to pay. Listen to me, she hissed. Mr. Chen's associates are very unhappy. They're asking questions about those photos you took. If you've shown them to anyone. Goodbye, Mom. Wait. I need you to wire me some money. Just a few thousand to smooth things over. I hung up, feeling sick. The train rocked gently as we passed through familiar neighborhoods, each mile taking us further from the wreckage of our old life. Harper. Finn's voice was small. What if she comes looking for us? I pulled out the Polaroid camera, the one thing I couldn't leave behind. Through its lens, I'd captured more than just evidence of Mom's betrayals. I'd documented our survival. Let her look, I said, snapping a picture of the sunrise through the train window. We're done hiding. My phone buzzed again, Dad this time. Almost there, his text read. Elise is making up the spare room. We'll figure this out together. I showed Finn the message, watched hope flicker across his face. Then I took out Mom's journal one last time, tore out the pages we might need as evidence, and dropped the rest in the garbage bin at the end of our car. The train curved north, carrying us towards something that felt like safety. In my bag, the Polaroids told our story, not just of betrayal and loss, but of 2 kids who refused to drown in their mother's chaos. Let her come looking. We had our own evidence now, our own truth. And this time we weren't backing down. Living with Dad and Elise should have felt like a victory. Instead, 6 months in, I found myself jumping at every phone call, every unexpected knock at the door. Mom's threats had followed us, evolving from desperate pleas for money to something darker. I was sorting through my latest batch of photos in the community college darkroom when my phone lit up with an unknown number. Your mother's in trouble, a man's voice said. Not Mr. Chen, but someone else. She owes people money. Dangerous people. But we're willing to be reasonable if. I hung up, hands shaking so badly I dropped the print I was developing. The image blurred, a shot of Finn at his new school's art show, actually smiling for the first time in months. Outside the darkroom, my photography professor caught my arm. Harper, about your portfolio submission for the scholarship. I'll have it ready next week, I promised, already heading for the exit. These photos were my only shot at affording next semester's tuition. Dad was trying, but supporting 2 extra people on a mechanic's salary wasn't easy. I found Elise waiting in her car outside, her usual warm smile replaced with something grimmer. "We need to talk." At home, Dad and Finn sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by scattered papers. My stomach dropped when I recognized Mom's handwriting. "These came today," Dad said quietly, sliding an envelope toward me. Inside were copies of credit card statements, new accounts opened in my name, maxed out with cash advances. "She stole my identity?" The words felt hollow in my mouth. "There's more," Elise said. "The police called. They're investigating a fraud scheme involving cryptocurrency investments. Your mother's name came up. They want to talk to you about those photos you took." I sank into a chair, the room spinning slightly. "If I testify, she could go to jail," Dad finished. Finn's pencil snapped in his hand. He'd been drawing obsessively lately, dark, twisted landscapes that his art teacher found concerning. My phone buzzed again, another unknown number. This time a text. "Your mother's safety depends on your cooperation. Bring $50,000 to the address below. Come alone." "I can't do this anymore," I whispered, showing them the message. Dad started to respond, but was interrupted by a crash from outside. We rushed to the window just in time to see someone running from Elise's car, all 4 tires slashed, windows smashed. On the hood, someone had spray painted, "Pay up or worse." "That's it," Dad said, already dialing the police. "We're getting a restraining order." "It won't help," I said, remembering the threats, the mysterious calls, the escalating demands. "As long as we have those photos, as long as I could testify." "Then we fight back," Elise said firmly. "I know people at the DA's office. We can." "No." I pulled out my camera, the one constant through all this chaos. Through its lens, I documented our family's collapse, thinking somehow the truth would protect us. Instead, it had put everyone I loved in danger. "I need to end this." I started deleting photos, the empty savings box, Mom's ransacked room, the eviction notice, evidence disappearing with each click. "Harper, stop." Dad reached for the camera. "Those are your proof, your protection." "They're a target," I corrected, pulling away. "On all of us. Mom's not going to stop, and neither are the people she owes. Unless." "Unless what?" Finn asked, his voice small. I looked at my family, my real family, the ones who'd chosen to stay, to protect, to love without conditions. Then I looked at my camera, still half full of evidence that could send Mom to prison. "Unless I give her exactly what she wants," I said quietly. "A clean slate. A fresh start. One last chance to run." "You can't," Dad protested. "After everything she did." "I'm not doing it for her." I met his eyes. "I'm doing it for us. For our chance to finally be free." My phone buzzed again. Another threat, another demand. But for the first time in months, I felt something other than fear. Sometimes I realized the best revenge isn't punishment. It's peace. I just hoped I was making the right choice. The photography contest exhibition was supposed to be my moment of triumph. Instead, I found myself staring at an empty space where my winning photo series should have been, a note pinned in its place. "Backloading doc. Come alone." I knew who'd taken them before I pushed open the heavy metal door. Mom stood in the shadows. My photograph spread across a wooden pallet like evidence at a crime scene. "Beautiful work," she said, touching one of the images. Finn sleeping on the train, exhaustion etched on his face. "You always did have an eye for tragedy. What do you want?" She stepped into the light. 6 months had aged her years. Her designer clothes replaced by shabby knockoffs, her confident smile now brittle and desperate. "Can't a mother attend her daughter's first gallery showing?" "Those photos won the grand prize," I said, keeping my distance. "The scholarship money is exactly what I need." She pulled out her phone, showing me a text message. "Mr. Chen's associates are getting impatient. They're talking about involving Finn now." My hands clenched. "Leave him out of this." "I'm trying to. But I need $30,000 to make this go away." "The prize money would cover it." "The money's for college," I said. "For a future you tried to steal from us." "I was trying to give you a better future." She grabbed one of the photos, the one of her ransacked room the night she left. "You think documenting our failures makes you noble? These pictures, this art of yours, it's just revenge wrapped in pretty paper." "You're right." I moved closer, watching her expression shift. It started as revenge. I wanted evidence, proof of everything you'd done to us. But then I realized something. What's that? These photos aren't about you anymore. I picked up another image, Finn's first art show at his new school. Dad and Elise cheering in the background. They're about us. The family we built from the wreckage you left behind. How dare you? She reached for the photos, but I was faster. The police are already here, I said quietly. They're very interested in Mr. Chen's investment scheme. And these photos? They're copies. The originals are safe with the DA's office. The color drained from her face. You wouldn't. Actually, I would. I pulled out my phone, showing her the text I'd sent earlier. But I'm giving you a choice. The police are watching every exit except the back alley. You have 5 minutes to disappear, for good this time. You're blackmailing me? She laughed, but I heard the fear beneath it. Your own mother? I'm freeing us both. I gathered the photos, leaving just one behind, the last picture I'd taken of her. Sleeping on the couch before everything fell apart. Take it. Remember what you lost. Then let us go. She stared at the photo, tears finally breaking through her carefully maintained facade. Harper, time's running out, I said, heading back toward the door. Make your choice. I didn't look back as I walked away, counting steps instead of seconds. When I reached the gallery, Finn was waiting with Dad and Elise, worry etched on their faces. Everything okay? Dad asked. Through the window, I caught a glimpse of movement in the alley, a familiar figure hurrying away into the darkness. My mother's final exit, stage left. Yeah, I said, turning to the empty wall where my photos should have been. Everything's fine. Finn squeezed my hand. What about your scholarship? I smiled, thinking of the real exhibition prints, safely stored in the gallery office. Some things are worth more than money. Like what? He asked. I looked at our little family, Dad's proud smile, Elise's gentle understanding, Finn's unwavering trust. Then I pulled out my camera, the same one that had documented our downfall and resurrection. Like this, I said, raising the viewfinder to my eye. Smile, everyone. The flash lit up the gallery like lightning, capturing not what we'd lost, but what we'd found instead. A family built on choice rather than obligation, strength rather than fear, and love that didn't come with conditions or price tags attached. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemy. It's about building something they can never touch. 4 years after the gallery showdown, I stood in my cap and gown, clutching my photography degree while Dad snapped pictures with my old Polaroid camera. The irony wasn't lost on me. You're hugging the camera, Finn complained, now taller than me and sporting blue hair that matched his latest art series. I want to document this properly. Speaking of documenting, Elise said, pulling an envelope from her bag. This came to the house yesterday. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Mom's. The postmark was from somewhere in Costa Rica. There's no return address, Elise added softly. Like always. Over the years, mysterious packages had appeared, birthday cards, newspaper clippings about my photography exhibitions. Even a wrinkled $5 bill when Finn won his first art competition. Mom never signed them, but we knew. Want me to throw it away? Dad asked, protective as ever. I shook my head, tucking the envelope into my graduation gown. Later, we celebrated at our favorite diner, the same one where I'd worked during my first year of college, before my photography career took off. My latest series, Fragments of Home, had just been picked up by a major gallery in New York. Remember when you used to hide your camera under the counter? Our regular waitress asked, bringing extra fries without being asked. Now look at you, Miss Famous Photographer. Finn rolled his eyes. Don't inflate her ego. She already thinks documenting my embarrassing teenage years makes her an artist. Speaking of documentation, I said, pulling out Mom's envelope. Anyone mind if I? They fell quiet as I opened it. Inside was a single photograph, one I'd taken years ago at that first disastrous family dinner, before everything fell apart. On the back, Mom had written, "You were right. Some things are worth more than money. I'm sorry I learned too late. You okay?" Dad asked. I looked around the table, at Finn's concerned face, Dad's steady presence, Elise's quiet support. Then I pulled out my camera. Actually, yeah. I stood up, backing away to frame the shot. Everyone squeeze in. The photo captured the mid-laugh, a moment of pure joy untainted by the past. Later, in my dark room, I developed 2 copies. One for my wall and one to send to a post office box in Costa Rica, not as forgiveness exactly, but as proof that broken things can become beautiful in their own way. That night, sorting through old photos for my upcoming exhibition, I found the final shot from that gallery confrontation 4 years ago. Mom's silhouette disappearing into the alley, running from consequences one last time. I'd titled it Escape Velocity, the speed needed to break free from gravity's pull. My phone buzzed, a message from my agent about the New York show. They wanted to know my theme. I looked at the wall of my studio, where hundreds of moments hung in careful chronology. The dinner that started it all. The train ride to safety. Finn's first art show. Dad and Elisa's wedding. Each image a step away from what was broken toward something stronger. I typed my response, reconstruction, a study in second chances. Then I picked up Mom's latest letter, added it to my collection, and turned off the lights. Tomorrow, I'd start packing for New York. Finn had already claimed the spare room in my new apartment, talking about art schools and fresh starts. Some people might call it running away, just like Mom did. But I knew the difference. She ran to escape her problems. We were running towards something better, toward the future we'd built from the pieces she left behind. The revenge I'd once craved had transformed into something else. The power to choose our own story, to capture beauty in the aftermath of chaos, to find family in the people who stay. As I locked up my studio, I passed the first photo I'd ever taken, that shot of the empty savings box that started it all. Next to it hung my latest work, our laughing family at the diner, the empty chair at the edge of the frame, both an absence and a possibility. Some stories don't end with justice or revenge. They end with reconstruction, with the quiet victory of building something new from the ruins of what was lost. And sometimes that's enough. I never expected to find my grandfather's letter while cleaning out his study, but there it was, tucked away in a worn leather journal, waiting like a time bomb to upend my entire life. The envelope had my name written across it in his precise handwriting, for Cassidy Harper, to be opened upon my passing. My name is Cass, and until that moment, I thought I knew exactly who I was and where my life was headed. I was wrong. Mom, I called out, my voice echoing through the empty halls of my grandfather's mansion. Mom, I found something. The floorboards creaked as my mother's footsteps approached. She appeared in the doorway, still wearing her nurse's scrubs from her night shift, dark circles under her eyes. What is it, honey? My hands trembled as I held up the envelope. It's from Grandpa. She crossed the room and sat beside me on the dusty floor, surrounded by boxes of old business documents and family photos. Well, open it. I broke the seal and unfolded the letter, my grandfather's words jumping off the page. My dearest Cassidy, if you're reading this, I've passed on, leaving behind not just my legacy, but a challenge. You've always been special, different from the rest of the family. You remind me of myself at your age, ambitious, determined, but perhaps too eager to prove yourself to others rather than to yourself. I've set aside a substantial inheritance for you, but it won't come easily. To claim it, you must first prove your worth by achieving something remarkable on your own terms. No handouts, no family connections, just your own grit and determination. You have 1 year from today to build something meaningful. What that means is for you to decide. The details of your inheritance will be revealed only when you've shown you're ready for it. Remember, true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the strength of one's character. With love and faith in your potential. Grandfather. That sounds exactly like him, Mom said softly, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. Always testing, always pushing. But what does he mean by something meaningful? I asked, running my fingers over his signature. And how will anyone know if I've succeeded? Your grandfather never did anything without a plan, Mom replied, picking up a framed photo of him from a nearby box. He probably has someone watching, evaluating. I thought about my life, my small online boutique that was barely breaking even, my engagement to Ben from the prestigious Aldrich family, and how everyone assumed I'd just coast through life on his family's wealth and connections. Maybe that's why he did this, I said, realization dawning. He knew about Ben's family, about Victoria. Mom's expression hardened at the mention of my future mother-in-law. That woman has made it clear she thinks you're not good enough for her precious son. Perhaps your grandfather wanted to give you a chance to prove her wrong. Or prove something to myself, I murmured, standing up and walking to the window. The setting sun cast long shadows across my grandfather's immaculate garden, where he taught me about patience and persistence while tending to his prized roses. My phone buzzed, a text from Ben. Dinner at my parents' tonight. Mother insists. Don't be late this time. I stared at the message, then back at the letter in my hand. For the first time, I felt the weight of my grandfather's words settling into my bones. This wasn't just about an inheritance. It was about choosing who I wanted to be. I need to make some changes, I said, turning back to Mom. Big ones. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. Your grandfather always said that sometimes you need to lose your way to find your path. I folded the letter carefully and slipped it into my pocket. Whatever my grandfather's challenge meant, whatever something meaningful I needed to build. I knew one thing for certain. Victoria Aldridge was about to meet a very different Cassidy Harper. The Aldridge mansion always made me feel like I was walking into a museum, everything perfectly placed, untouchable, and cold. Tonight was no different, except I had my grandfather's letter burning a hole in my purse, giving me an odd sense of courage as I rang the doorbell. Victoria opened the door herself, perfectly coiffed as always. Cassidy, dear, you're actually on time for once. I bit back a retort, forcing a smile. Good evening, Victoria. The dining room was a study in old money, crystal chandelier, antique silverware, and enough tension to crack the fine china. Ben squeezed my hand under the table as Walter, his father, cleared his throat. So, Cassidy, Victoria began, delicately cutting into her salmon, I heard your little online shop is still operating. The way she said operating made it sound like a terminal illness. I straightened my spine, remembering my grandfather's words about proving myself. Actually, I'm expanding, I replied. I've been working on a new business plan. Oh, darling, Victoria interrupted, sharing a knowing look with Walter. Wouldn't it be better to focus on the wedding plans? After all, once you're married to Bennett, you won't need to worry about such things. Ben shifted uncomfortably beside me, but said nothing. Typical. I think it's important to have my own goals, I said firmly. My grandfather always taught me. Yes, your grandfather. Victoria cut in again. Such a shame about his passing. Though I must say, the inheritance situation seems rather unusual. My fork clattered against my plate. Excuse me? Well, word gets around in our circles, dear. A conditional inheritance? It seems rather cruel to make you jump through hoops like some circus performer. The room went silent. I could feel Ben's eyes on me, but I kept my gaze locked on Victoria. My grandfather believed in earning your way, I said quietly. Something about building character. Victoria's laugh was like ice crackling. Character? In our world, dear, it's about connections. Speaking of which, Bennett, didn't you want to tell Cassidy about the country club membership? Ben finally spoke up. Mother, I don't think. We've sponsored you both for membership, Victoria announced. It's essential for our social circle. The wedding announcements will be in their newsletter. I set down my napkin. Actually, I'd prefer to wait on the announcements. With my business expansion. Nonsense. Victoria waved her hand dismissively. Bennett needs to establish himself as a family man for his upcoming promotion. The timing is perfect. Victoria, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. I appreciate the gesture, but Ben and I should decide our timeline. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Victoria's smile never wavered, but her eyes hardened. My dear, you seem to be under the impression that you have a say in how the Aldridge family conducts its affairs.
How?
Quaint. Ben's hand found my knee under the table, squeezing in what he probably thought was reassurance. But all I felt was pressure, to conform, to submit, to become another perfectly placed object in Victoria's museum. I stood up slowly. I need some air. As I walked toward the garden, I heard Victoria's voice floating behind me. Really, Bennett, are you sure she's the right fit for our family? In the garden, I pulled out my grandfather's letter, reading it again under the moonlight. The words, "your own terms," jumped out at me, and suddenly I understood why he'd set this challenge. Ben found me there, his footsteps hesitant on the gravel path. "Cass, you know how Mother can be.
She means well."
I turned to face him, really seeing him for the first time, the golden boy who'd never had to fight for anything in his life. "Does she, Ben? Does she really?" He ran a hand through his hair, looking lost. "Just
Give it time.
things will settle once we're married." But as I watched him standing there, unable to defend me, unable to stand up to his mother, I realized something that sent a chill down my spine. Things wouldn't settle, they would get worse. And my grandfather's challenge wasn't just about proving myself to others, it was about proving to myself that I deserved better than this. The email from Felix Moreno arrived just as I was trying to salvage what was left of my morning. 3 potential investors had already backed out of meetings with my boutique, all citing scheduling conflicts.
Right.
"Interesting timing," I muttered, clicking open the message. Felix was a legend in the fashion industry, known for turning small brands into empire-level successes. Why would he be reaching out to me? "I've been watching your work," his email read. "Coffee? Today at 2. I was about to reply when my phone buzzed with a text from one of my suppliers. "Sorry, but we have to terminate our contract." Nothing personal. Nothing personal.
Right.
Just like the investors' sudden scheduling conflicts weren't personal. Just like Victoria's smug smile at last week's charity luncheon wasn't personal. I dialed Ben's number, my hands shaking. Straight to voicemail. Again. "Meeting Felix Moreno." I typed back to the email. "Send me the address." The cafe Felix chose was nothing like I expected, no pretension, just a cozy corner spot with mismatched chairs and the smell of fresh coffee. He stood when I approached, his smile genuine beneath salt and pepper hair. "Cassidy Harper," he said, extending his hand. "I've been following your situation with interest." "My situation?" He gestured for me to sit. Small businesses don't usually lose 3 investors and a major supplier in 1 week without reason. Especially not promising ones like yours. "How did you?" "Victoria Aldridge has a lot of influence," he said simply. "But she's not the only one with connections." My coffee cup rattled against its saucer. "You know Victoria?" "I know how she operates. She's trying to squeeze you out, make you dependent on her son's family money." He leaned forward. "Question is, what are you going to do about it?" Before I could answer, my phone lit up with Ben's face. Finally. "Sorry, I need to take this," I said, stepping outside. "Ben." "Cass, where are you? Mother's been trying to reach you about the wedding planner." "Ben, my suppliers just dropped me. All of them."
Did you know anything about this?
A pause. Mother might have mentioned something about protecting the family's interests. The world tilted sideways. Family interests? What about my interests, Ben? My business? Look, maybe Mother's right. The boutique was just a hobby anyway, wasn't it? Once we're married. A hobby? My voice cracked. "Is that what you think of my work?" "Cass, be reasonable. Mother's just looking out for us," she says. "Stop.
Just
Stop." I ended the call, my vision blurring. When I returned to the table, Felix was studying me with knowing eyes. "Tough call." "Victoria's been blacklisting my business," I said, the words bitter in my mouth. "And my fiancé, he's choosing her side." Felix nodded slowly. "You know, I knew your grandfather." That stopped me cold. "What?" "Smart man. Taught me a lot about business. And about recognizing potential." He pulled out a folder. "I have a proposition for you. A partnership that would put your boutique on the map, completely independent of the Aldridge influence." My hands trembled as I opened the folder. The terms were better than I'd ever dreamed possible. "Why?" I asked. "Why help me?" "Because talent deserves a chance," he said. "And because watching Victoria Aldridge's face when your brand succeeds on its own will be satisfying." My phone buzzed again, Victoria's number this time. I silenced it, thinking of my grandfather's letter, of his challenge to prove myself. "There's one condition," Felix added. "You can't tell anyone about our partnership." "Not yet." Let them think you're failing, let them get comfortable in their victory. Then we'll show them what you're really capable of. I thought about Victoria's smug smile, about Ben's weakness, about all the times I'd swallowed my pride to keep the peace. When do we start? I asked, reaching for the pen. Felix's smile was sharp. We already have. Check your email tonight. You'll find some interesting information about who's really been sabotaging your business. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just success. It's having proof. As I signed a contract, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about proving myself anymore. This was about justice, and I was just getting started. The invitation to New York Fashion Week's Emerging Designer Showcase sat on my desk like a bomb waiting to detonate. Felix had pulled strings I didn't even know existed, creating an opportunity that could launch my brand into the stratosphere. The catch? It was the same weekend as Ben's family's annual charity gala. My phone lit up with Ben's message. Mother's furious. Says you're embarrassing the family by skipping the gala. Please don't make this difficult. I was still staring at his text when Felix walked into my studio, his expression grim. You need to see this. He handed me his tablet, open to a society blog. There, in high-resolution glory, was a photo of Victoria having lunch with Marcus Chen, my biggest competitor in the local fashion scene. The same Marcus Chen who'd suddenly started carrying suspiciously similar designs to my upcoming collection. That's not all, Felix said, scrolling down. Look who else was at that lunch. My heart stopped.
Ben.
My fiancé was there, smiling and shaking Marcus's hand. The photos were taken 3 days ago, Felix added quietly. Right after your designs were leaked. The room started spinning. I gripped the edge of my desk, my engagement ring catching the light mockingly. I need to talk to Ben, I managed. Cassidy. He must have an explanation. Ben agreed to meet me at our usual cafe. He was already there when I arrived, fiddling with his watch, the nervous tell I used to find endearing. Mother says you're being unreasonable about the gala, he started before I could speak. It's tradition, Cass. The whole family. I slid Felix's tablet across the table. Ben's face went pale. Want to explain this? It's not what you think, he stammered. Mother suggested I network with Marcus. He's very successful. And the leaked designs? Was that networking too? His silence was deafening. Did you know? I pressed. Did you know what they were planning? Mother said it was for your own good. He finally mumbled. That you needed to focus on being an Aldridge, not chasing pipe dreams. Something inside me shattered. Pipe dreams? Is that what you think of my work? Be realistic, Cass. What's more important, some fashion show or our future? They're the same thing. I stood up so quickly my chair scraped against the floor. At least, they should be. You're being dramatic. No, I'm being betrayed. By my fiancé. By the man who's supposed to be my partner. Ben reached for my hand. We can fix this. Just apologize to Mother. Attend the gala? I yanked my hand away. And what about my show? My designs that your mother helped steal. They're just clothes, Cass. For words. That's all it took to make everything crystallize. My phone buzzed, Felix sending the final confirmation for New York. I needed to decide now. The showcase or the gala. My dreams or Ben's family. My future or their version of it. I have to go, I said, gathering my things. I have a meeting about those, just clothes. Cass, wait. But I was already walking away, my mind racing with possibilities. Victoria thought she'd backed me into a corner, but she'd forgotten something crucial. Cornered animals fight back. Back at the studio, Felix was waiting. Well, how much time do we have to create a new collection? He raised an eyebrow. 3 weeks until New York. It's impossible. I thought about my grandfather's letter about proving my worth. About Ben's betrayal and Victoria's smug certainty that I'd fall in line. Nothing's impossible, I said, pulling out my sketchbook. And I want to make damn sure that when Victoria sees these designs on the runway, she knows exactly what she tried to steal. Felix's slow smile was all the answer I needed. I'll make some calls. But Cassidy, this isn't just about proving yourself anymore. This is war. I looked down at my engagement ring, then slowly slipped it off. No, this is justice. And I'm just getting started. The engagement party at the Aldridge Mansion felt like a carefully orchestrated trap. Every crystal glass, every perfectly arranged flower screamed Victoria's influence. I stood in the corner, watching Ben work the room, wondering how I'd let things get this far. "Darling, there you are." Victoria's voice cut through my thoughts. She gripped my arm, steering me toward a group of society women. "Ladies, this is Bennett's."
Fiancé.
The pause before fiancé was deliberate, just like everything else Victoria did. "We heard about your little fashion venture," one woman said, pearl necklace gleaming. "Such a shame about the copy designs." My champagne glass froze halfway to my lips. "Excuse me? Oh, didn't you know?" Victoria's smile was razor-sharp. "Marcus Chen's new collection is causing quite a stir. Some say it's remarkably similar to certain amateur sketches." The room suddenly felt too small. I searched for Ben, finding him deep in conversation with Marcus Chen himself. They were laughing. "If you'll excuse me," I managed, but Victoria's grip tightened. "Actually, I have an announcement to make." She clinked her glass, drawing everyone's attention. "Bennett and Cassidy have agreed to move up the wedding. Next month, in fact." The room erupted in polite applause. I stood there, stunned. We hadn't agreed to anything. "Mother," Ben appeared beside us. "We haven't." "Nonsense, darling. The arrangements are all made. The country club is perfect in spring, and this way, Cassidy can focus on being a proper Aldridge wife instead of these distractions." The word hung in the air like poison. I felt dozens of eyes on me, waiting for my reaction. This was Victoria's power play: back down or cause a scene. "Actually," I heard myself say, "I have an announcement too." Victoria's smile flickered. Ben touched my arm. "Cass, don't. My new collection will be debuting at New York Fashion Week." The words fell like bombs in the silent room. The one Marcus Chin didn't manage to steal. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Victoria's face hardened. "How dare you accuse?" "I have proof." I pulled out my phone, bringing up the photos Felix had gathered. "Interesting lunch meeting you all had last week. Did you really think no one would notice?" "This is hardly the time or place," Victoria hissed. "You're right." I turned to the crowd. "The time was before you tried to destroy my business. The place was anywhere but here, where you planned to announce my wedding date without even asking me." Ben stepped forward. "Cassidy, you're embarrassing yourself."
No, Ben.
For once, I'm standing up for myself. I slipped off my engagement ring. "I won't let your mother dictate my life or steal my dreams." Victoria's laugh was cold. "Dreams? You think a few dresses make you special? Without the Aldridge name, you're nothing." "That's where you're wrong." I held up my grandfather's letter. "I'm a Harper, and we build our own legacy." The room was dead silent as I walked toward the door. Ben called after me. "Cass, wait. We can fix this." I turned back one last time. "There's nothing to fix, Ben. Your mother wanted me to choose between my dreams and your family. So I'm choosing." "You'll regret this," Victoria called out. "I'll make sure you never work in this industry again." I smiled, thinking of the collection hidden in my studio, of Felix's connections, of my grandfather's words about proving my worth.
No, Victoria.
"You'll regret underestimating me." Outside, the night air felt like freedom. My phone buzzed, a message from Felix. "Buyers confirmed for the show. Ready to make history?" I took one last look at the mansion, at the life I thought I wanted, at the cage Victoria had tried to build around me. Then I typed back, "Time to show them what a Harper can do." As I drove away, I realized something. Revenge wasn't about destroying Victoria. It was about becoming everything she said I couldn't be. And I was just getting started. The real war would begin in New York, and this time, I had nothing left to lose. The annual charity gala buzzed with whispers as I walked in. 3 months of work, sleepless nights, and Felix's guidance had transformed my small boutique into a rising star. Tonight was supposed to be my triumph, my first major donation as a successful businesswoman. Instead, Victoria was already holding court near the stage, Marcus Chun at her side. Cassidy Harper, she announced loudly as I passed. How brave of you to show up, considering the circumstances. I kept walking, but her voice carried. Did you hear about the plagiarism accusations? Apparently, she stole designs from poor Marcus here. Felix appeared at my elbow, steady as always. Remember the plan. Let her talk. She's turning everything around, I whispered, making me look like the thief. That's what cornered animals do. They lash out. The donation ceremony began. I watched as Victoria took the stage, Ben beside her, both radiating old money confidence. The Aldrich family is proud to announce a $100,000 donation, Victoria declared. Then her eyes found mine. Unlike some who try to buy their way into society with suspicious funds, the room went silent. I felt dozens of eyes turn to me. What is she talking about? Someone whispered. Victoria's smile was venomous. Oh, didn't everyone know? Miss Harper's sudden success came right after breaking things off with my son. Quite convenient timing, wouldn't you say? Using poor Bennett's investment to fund her adventures. My hands shook as I stood. That's a lie. Is it? Victoria produced a document. These bank transfers suggest otherwise. Felix grabbed my arm. Don't. But I was already moving toward the stage. Ben wouldn't meet my eyes as I passed him. Those transfers, I said, my voice carrying across the silent room, were reversed. By your son, after he and your husband tried to sabotage my business. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Victoria's smile never wavered. Such accusations. But then we expected this sort of common behavior. After all, what else could we expect from someone who what? I pulled out my grandfather's letter. Someone who earned their success instead of marrying into it. Victoria's eyes narrowed. Security, please remove.
No.
I turned to face the crowd. You all want to know where my money came from? Here's the truth. I unfolded the letter, but before I could read it, Ben stepped forward. Cass, don't do this. Why not? Afraid everyone will learn how your family operates.
No.
His voice was quiet. Afraid they'll learn how you operate. Show them the rest of the letter, Cass. The part about the conditions. My blood ran cold. What? Victoria's smile widened. Oh yes, do share. About how your grandfather's inheritance required you to marry into a prominent family. How you used my son to fulfill those conditions. The letter trembled in my hands. That's not the full letter, Miss Harper. Victoria produced another document, which my private investigators so helpfully obtained from your grandfather's lawyer. The room spun as I read the second page, the page I'd never seen. My grandfather's words burned into my brain. Marriage into a family of suitable standing will prove you understand the value of strategic alliances. No, I whispered. Yes, Victoria purred. You played the game just as calculated as anyone. The only difference is you lost. I looked at Felix, saw the shock on his face. All our plans, all our work. The donation committee, Victoria announced, might want to reconsider accepting funds from someone who built their success on manipulation and lies. The whispers grew louder. I watched as everything I'd built began crumbling around me. Cass, Felix murmured, we need to go. But I stood frozen, watching Ben avoid my gaze, seeing Victoria's triumph, feeling my grandfather's legacy twist into something ugly and false. As security approached, I realized the true depth of Victoria's revenge. She hadn't just attacked my business or my reputation. She destroyed the one thing I thought I could trust, my grandfather's faith in me. The worst part? I didn't know anymore if she was wrong about me after all. I found Ben waiting outside my apartment, leaning against his car in the rain. 3 days had passed since the gala, and my phone hadn't stopped ringing with cancellations from buyers and suppliers. You shouldn't be here, I said, fumbling with my keys. Mother went too far. His voice was quiet. I came to fix things. I laughed, the sound hollow even to my own ears. Fix things? Like you fixed them when she stole my designs? Or when she destroyed my reputation? I didn't know about the letter. He stepped closer. About your grandfather's conditions. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't know either. The key finally slid home. But it doesn't matter anymore, does it? Your mother won. Game over. It doesn't have to be. He caught the door before I could close it. We could still make this work. Get married. Fulfill the conditions. You'd get your inheritance and mother would. Would what?
Accept me?
Stop trying to destroy everything I've built. She's just protecting the family name. The words hit like a slap. I stepped back, really looking at him. This man I'd thought I loved, who'd never once chosen me over his mother's expectations. You still don't get it, do you? I whispered. This was never about the money or the inheritance. It was about proving I could succeed on my own terms. But you don't have to. Why can't you just what? Be the perfect Aldridge wife? Give up my dreams? Become another trophy in your mother's collection? His silence was answer enough. Get out, Cass. I said get out. I started throwing his things into boxes. The expensive watch he'd left on my dresser, designer clothes that had slowly migrated into my closet, photos of us at charity events where I'd tried so hard to fit in. What are you doing? He grabbed my arm. I yanked away. Exactly what I should have done months ago. Choosing myself. You're being dramatic. No, I'm being honest. Finally, I shoved a box into his chest. Your mother didn't just try to destroy my business, Ben. She tried to destroy who I am. And you let her. I tried to protect you. By staying silent, by watching her tear me down. My voice cracked. That's not protection. That's cowardice. The word hung between us like a blade. Take your things and go, I said quietly. Go back to your perfect family and your perfect life. I'm done trying to fit into it. This is crazy. You're throwing away everything.
No.
I pulled out my phone, showing him the email I'd received that morning. I'm choosing everything. Felix just confirmed 3 major retailers want to carry my designs. The real ones, not the copies your mother helped steal. His face paled. But the scandal actually helped. Turns out people love an underdog story, especially when there's proof of corporate theft. You wouldn't dare. Try me. I met his eyes. Your mother taught me well, Ben. Sometimes you have to be willing to burn it all down to build something better. He stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. Maybe he was. Mother was right about you, he said finally. You never belonged in our world. No, I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in months. I belonged in something better. I just forgot that for a while. After he left, I sat in my empty apartment, looking at the chaos of boxes and memories. My phone buzzed, a text from Felix. Ready to show them what real success looks like? I thought about my grandfather's letter, about Victoria's smug certainty, about Ben's weakness. Then I thought about my mother's strength, Felix's faith in me, and my own forgotten dreams. Time to write my own story, I texted back. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about becoming exactly who they said you couldn't be. And I was just getting started. 1 year to the day after finding my grandfather's letter, I stood in his study again. The room felt different now, lighter somehow, as if the weight of expectations had finally lifted. Ready? Mom asked, holding up an envelope from my grandfather's lawyer. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind. My collection had launched at Fashion Week, earning critical acclaim and major retail contracts. Meanwhile, the Aldridge empire had stumbled after evidence of their design theft went public. Ben had resigned in disgrace, and Victoria's social standing had crumbled. I hadn't planned any of it. Sometimes karma writes better revenge stories than we ever could. Open it, Felix urged from a spot by the window. He'd become more than a mentor. He was family now. The letter inside wasn't what I expected. My dearest Cassidy, if you're reading this, you've completed your challenge, though perhaps not in the way I originally intended. The marriage clause was never meant to be revealed. It was Victoria Aldridge who added that page, using her connections to alter my wishes after my death. But you found your own path anyway, just as I knew you would. Your inheritance isn't just money, Cassidy. It's the truth about your strength. Sometimes we need to lose everything to discover what we're truly worth. The Harper fortune is yours, But you've already claimed something far more valuable. Your independence. With pride. Grandfather. I looked up at Mom, who was smiling through tears. He knew, she said softly. He knew Victoria would try to manipulate the situation. That's why he left the original letter with me. She pulled out another envelope, weathered and sealed. Inside was the real second page, no marriage clause, just a simple message. Trust yourself. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. Because you needed to choose your path without knowing. Just like I did when I left your father. The parallel hit me hard. Mom had walked away from wealth and security too, choosing independence over a gilded cage. Felix cleared his throat. Speaking of choices, there's something else you should know. He handed me a newspaper. This is running tomorrow. The headline made my breath catch. Aldridge Corp CEO steps down amid scandal. Victoria Aldridge admits to years of corporate espionage. She confessed. I whispered. Not out of guilt, Felix said. Then threatened to expose everything if she didn't step down. Apparently, he finally found his spine. Too late, I murmured, but without bitterness. That chapter was closed. My phone buzzed, a message from Ben. You were right. About everything. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. I didn't reply. Some answers are better left unspoken. So what now? Mom asked, watching me carefully. I walked to my grandfather's desk, running my fingers over the worn wood where he'd built his own empire.
Now?
I build something new. Something that's purely mine. Already ahead of you. Felix grinned, pulling out another folder. 3 international retailers won exclusive collections. And that fashion institute you mentioned? The board loves the idea of sponsoring scholarships for young designers. I smiled, thinking of other dreamers like me, fighting for their chance. You know, Mom said, your grandfather always said success wasn't about proving others wrong. It was about proving yourself right. He was right about that too. I picked up his old nameplate, then set it down again. But sometimes proving yourself right means walking away from what others think you should want. Felix raised an eyebrow. Even with the inheritance? Especially with it. Money's just a tool. The real inheritance was learning to trust myself. As we left the study, I took one last look around. The room no longer felt like a museum of expectations. It was just a room where one story had ended and another had begun. My phone buzzed again. Victoria's number. I declined the call without hesitation. Some people never change, but that's their burden to bear, not mine. I had my own legacy to build now, and it had nothing to do with revenge or proving my worth to others. It was simply about being true to myself. Sometimes that's the greatest victory of all.